Chapter 873. Next, are you going to tell me that cause and effect can't be so simple? Not everything can be done as a deal. Or are you going to say that if you can't achieve your initial goal with me, you'll die sooner or later? Why don't you take me with you? Lin Yuan shook his head and showed a sarcastic smile to Red Cloud Taoist. He jokingly said, then let's give it a try. I should have died a long time ago. Although I am a little unwilling, it is still a profit to be able to take away a powerful person who is famous in the wilderness before I die. Taoist Red Cloud was speechless. Was this Black Jiao really not afraid of death? Or, was he a lunatic in essence? Taoist Red Cloud was definitely not willing to do such an extreme one-for-one exchange. Life forms often had a common characteristic: the closer they were to death, the more they cherished their lives. For example, there were always people who kept saying how they were not afraid of death, but when it came to the moment of life and death, they might be the first to break down. For existences like Red Cloud, who had lived for an unknown number of years, living had already become a kind of obsession. In other words, this was a common problem for all cultivators. This so-called cultivation was nothing more than going against the heavens and taking one's life in order to achieve immortality. Lin Yuan, however, is the unparalleled exception. His obsession was not to live, but to take revenge. Taoist Red Cloud was seen through by Lin Yuan at a glance. After thinking carefully for a moment, he raised his hands and said, since we can't reach an agreement, let's put aside karma for the time being and talk about other things. What do you think? Lin Yuan did not speak. He just tilted his head and motioned for Taoist Red Cloud to continue. It was just that he was haunted by his inner demons, so he would occasionally lose control of his words and actions. Especially when he was provoked, he would appear paranoid and crazy. However, this did not mean that he had become a complete lunatic. These creatures who had escaped from the untainted land back then were natural allies. For Hong Jun, who was extremely paranoid and worried that the later cultivators would threaten him and even change his path of cultivation, these creatures of the untainted land who had betrayed him were definitely on the list of those who had to be executed. It was just that he did not have the time to deal with them for the time being. Only a fool would refuse to help a friend who wanted to help him. However, Lin Yuan's attitude was always the same. If he was willing to talk nicely, then talk nicely. If he was not willing to talk nicely, then he would directly flip the table and be done with it. He had to put on a sour face as if he owed hoo-hoo. Lin Yuan only replied with 4 words, do it and be done with it. You need help right now. The northern frontier is under the pressure of the sky demon. It might not be obvious in a short period of time, but as time goes by, the foundation of the northern frontier will be shaken. The ordinary people who can't survive will sell their land to the officials of the northern frontier and the instructors of the academies. It won't be long before the noble families and sects that you have suppressed with great difficulty show up again. Together with the remaining old noble families, these new forces will be even more difficult to deal with. Even if you remove them, it will be like cutting off meat from the northern frontier. Also, the academy system that you painstakingly set up will probably be wiped out in the long war. Those lost talents that you found with great difficulty, whether it is for a good future, to repay your kindness, or simply to obey the orders of their superiors, they will all become the army's reserves and rush to the battlefield with a slim chance of survival. Once these people die in battle, who knows how long it will take for you to find a group of people who are worth nurturing, commoners, or even those who are dissatisfied with the old aristocratic families. I'm not saying that you won't be able to wait that long, but I feel that by that time, you probably won't need these low-level helpers anymore. Also, the 6 great empires have been dissatisfied with you for a long time. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce has always controlled the Hingduan mountain range, which is the center of the Tianwu continent, to trade. Whether it is profits or benefits, it is countless times better than passing through the territories of the various empires and following the borders of the sea. However, the Hingduan mountain range's monsters don't trust them, and they don't dare to join forces to attack the Hengduan mountain range. Therefore, they can only watch as your Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce takes away large amounts of resources from their territories. However, the problem is that the Hengduan mountain range doesn't trust the northern frontier, but you. Once something happens to you, the Hengduan mountain range will immediately seal off all routes to the northern frontier. Not only will the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce suffer a loss, but the Shuangjin dynasty and the Qing River Empire will also definitely take this opportunity to launch a war on the northern frontier and plunder the resources stored in the northern frontier to strengthen themselves. If you are trapped in the endless sea for too long, the morale of the people in the northern frontier will definitely waver. Even if the Sky Demon is a huge threat, they won't immediately cause chaos. However, the Sky Demon will be wiped out sooner or later, especially after you have caused such a huge commotion in the endless sea. No matter how greedy they are, they won't dare to continue testing your bottom line in the short term. Thus, the Sky Demon's problem will soon be dealt with by the Heavenly Gate Guardians. It is only a matter of time before he is wiped out. Once the Sky Demon is wiped out, the northern frontier will fall into internal strife. As a Heaven's chosen one, you shouldn't be cultivating the way of immortality modified by that old guy, right? Furthermore, you are not a chaos demon god that existed before the Eldritch world was created. You don't have innately powerful strength or a spiritual treasure. Isn't the reason why you can improve so quickly because of the existence of the northern frontier? Daoist Red Cloud placed his hands behind his back. His face was calm as if he had already seen through everything. He said in a deep voice, "Some people think that the northern region is just an amalgamation of interests and that it's only because of your existence that the arrogant people in the northern region are subdued. However, they clearly haven't thought about the fact that it wasn't you who subdued the northern region, but the northern region that made you." Speaking of this, Taoist Red Cloud seemed to have found something that could be used against him. He smiled like a fox that had stolen a chicken and said in a low voice, "The northern frontier is very important to you. You can't afford to lose it, right?" Lin Yuan opened his mouth but didn't refute. It wasn't that Taoist Red Cloud was right. It was just that Lin Yuan simply wanted to see what Taoist Red Cloud was up to. Did he rely on the northern frontier to get to where he is today? Sorry, you don't know anything about real hacking. However, thinking about it, those who didn't understand the way of gods wouldn't understand the significance of the northern frontier to Lin Yuan. Taoist Red Cloud, who understood the way of gods too well, naturally misunderstood the significance of the northern frontier to Lin Yuan. After all, no matter how big the hole in his brain was, he couldn't imagine that Lin Yuan didn't grow according to the system's arrangements. Instead, he braced himself and imitated the path of the totem ancient god, striving to break free from the system's control. Chapter 874. Black Jiao, you might have misunderstood the degree of deterrence your great karma has on us. You have to know that although the rules are powerful, as long as we are willing, we can find countless loopholes. Just like that old thing, didn't he succeed in controlling the heavenly Tao after painstaking planning? Although he didn't reach a perfect state, in the untainted world, he was truly invincible. Although we don't dare to attack you directly, we can indirectly hurt you based on the current situation. For example, if the demon court steps forward to stop those who are eager to participate in the war against the heavenly demons and try to form a good relationship with you, the war in the northern region will be infinitely prolonged. It will only stop obediently when we are willing to stop it. However, in essence, we didn't violate the rules because we didn't attack you. We only stopped your reinforcements and let you continue to face the Sky Demon's attacks alone. At this point, the smile on Daoist Red Cloud's face became even wider. He continued, "Let me make it clear first. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you a fact. Even if the demon court goes into hiding for another 10 million years, as long as these two words appear, all the cultivators and monsters in this world will be silent. Do you understand?" Lin Yuan continued to remain silent. Although there was no lack of exaggeration in Daoist Red Cloud's words, in a sense, he was not scaring Lin Yuan. Back when Lin Yuan was still a monster at the Spirit Awakening realm, when he casually mentioned the tiger skin of the demon court, many people were already afraid of attacking the rat for fear of breaking the vases. They even only dared to hide and secretly observe. After Lin Yuan grew up, he exposed more and more secrets, attracting more and more greedy people. Even forces at the level of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the guts to flip the table. Later on, many Heavenly Gate Guardians took out resources from the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to reward Lin Yuan, hoping to use this method to demonstrate their power. The tiger skin called the Demon Court was becoming less and less intimidating to greedy people. That was indeed an indisputable fact. After all, the Demon Court had been hidden from the world for many years. Other than the old cultivators of the past, few in the new generation had even heard of the Demon Court. In addition, Lin Yuan's identity as a member of the Demon Court was something only he said himself. Although Lin Yuan had taken out many trump cards to deal with the probing, none of them could prove that he was from the Demon Court. So the more trump cards he took out, the more greedy people he attracted. This time in the Endless Sea, although Lin Yuan had spent 3 million incense power to invite a big shot who had killed so many people in the Sky Marshal continent to help him, it was only enough to deter those greedy people for a short period of time. After all, the white-robed man was not a permanent resident. Some cultivators who were stuck at a bottleneck and could not take even half a step forward were extremely terrifying. Just like Daoist Red Dust of the Red Dust Society, he was willing to sell the entire Red Dust Society to Lin Yuan for a second-rate cultivation method that even Lin Yuan himself was not sure about. It was possible that those greedy people would develop inner demons because they could not take a step forward, or because their lifespan was about to run out, and they would want to take a gamble and find trouble with Lin Yuan. It was not that Lin Yuan was not terrifying, but the prestige that the Demon Court had accumulated over time since it took root in this world was far from what Lin Yuan, who had not even been in the Sky Marshal continent for 3 years, could compare to. If the Demon Court did not appear, they would naturally not feel it. However, if the Demon Court appeared, those great cultivators who had lived for countless years would be the first to bow down to them. And then, Lin Yuan still maintained his posture with his head tilted, waiting for Daoist Red Cloud to continue. But on the other hand, if you cooperate with us, the Guardians of the Heaven Gate will no longer be a problem for you. They will soon cut into the rear of the Sky Demon and provide strong and powerful support for the northern frontier, greatly alleviating the current predicament of the northern frontier. At the same time, the foundation that you have laid in the Endless Sea will also be protected. Although the dragon race of the Four Seas is constantly weakening, especially now, they are almost on the verge of extinction. However, the heritage left behind by any powerful race cannot be underestimated. If the Dragon King is willing, the insignificant Sea Demon Guild and the Outer Sea Demon Beasts are just clay chickens and pottery dogs. As long as you nod your head and are willing to cooperate with us, all the difficulties you face will be easily solved. When you unify the Sky Marshal world, refine the entire world into your divine kingdom, and repair the 3 realms and 6 paths, in this world, there will be no one who can be your opponent. The smile on Daoist Red Cloud's face became even wider. He extended his right hand towards Lin Yuan and said, "The only price you need to pay is to admit that we are your comrades. That is all. Reject him." Without waiting for Lin Yuan to ponder whether there were any traps, the system decisively interrupted Lin Yuan's thoughts. Previously, when you first arrived in this world, although you used the tiger skin of the Demon Court, the Demon Court you mentioned was not them. The trouble that you encountered was also solved by you. It was only a while ago that they realized that if they continued to ignore it, there would not be any karma between the two of you. Therefore, the members of the Demon Court secretly intervened and helped you solve some problems that were neither big nor small. For this kind of karma, the proposal that you gave previously is enough to repay them. They can even be said to have profited greatly. However, They are not satisfied with this and want to cooperate with you at this time to make you admit that they are your comrades. But think about it carefully. What do they need to pay to cooperate with you at this time? Your actions in the endless sea are enough to make the various forces fear you. Even if the demon court did not intervene, the guardians of the heavenly gate would not dare to continue testing you. Even if the monsters in the endless sea covet your gains, they would have to be obedient for a period of time before making a fuss. In fact, they don't have to do anything. They just have to greet you and use the name of the demon court and your own deterrence to complete these operations. Even without their interference, your previous deterrence was enough to exchange for a period of stability. Do you think that this period of time will be very short? That's right. That's right. Or do you think that you have not improved at all during this period of time? They are treating you as a fool, and they are treating me as a fool. There was no joy or sorrow on Lin Yuan's face, but he was silently communicating with the system in his heart. But the problem is that a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. This is an eternal truth. If I directly reject them. Chapter 875. So what if I fall out with you? Don't forget that there is an upper limit to one's strength in this world. No matter how strong these fellows were in the past, they had to suppress their strength in this world. Otherwise, it would cause the world to collapse. Even if they were not killed by the rules, it would cause the world to collapse. Everyone would be finished together. Furthermore, it's hard to say if they can break through the limits of the rules and use strength that exceeds the upper limit of this world. After so many years, I'm still angry when I see these bastards again. They don't want to do anything at all and want to reap the benefits. If it weren't for these fellows not doing anything, how could a mere Hongjun steal the heavenly way? The system cursed. If it had a physical body, it would have jumped up and cursed. Lin Yuan blinked and felt that the water in the primordial world was deeper than he had thought. However, the system was mainly cursing these almighty beings of the primordial world for not doing anything back then. As soon as Hongjun gained power, they immediately planned to escape from the primordial world. Obviously, it did not intend to continue revealing anything to Lin Yuan. From the information that he had obtained, Hongjun did not steal the heavenly way overnight. Most of the creatures of the primordial world knew about it. However, other than the creatures of the primordial world who had sided with Hongjun, the other creatures of the primordial world were basically in a state of not doing anything. Otherwise, the heavenly way would not have been so weak that it was forced to separate a piece of its origin and escape into the sea of misery, allowing Hongjun to steal the primordial heavenly way. If not for the fact that the game between the heavenly way and Hongjun had reached its climax and that Hongjun was continuously sending creatures of the primordial world to other worlds to track down the traces of the heavenly way, these escaped creatures of the primordial world would most likely still be playing dead in a corner of a certain world. Senior Hong Yun's words are reasonable. The northern frontier is my foundation, so no matter what, I have to protect the northern frontier. However, the question is, why do I have to borrow your hands? Lin Yuan curled up his body and said meaningfully, the demon court can order the guardians of the heavenly gate to do things just by opening their mouths. I definitely have no doubts, but how do you know that I must be inferior to you? In this period of time, I'm afraid that I have more face in the eyes of the heavenly gate guardian than your demon court. The system's words reminded Lin Yuan. The martial heaven world wasn't complete. The cultivators and sea demons here all had a limit to their strength. The strongest were only at the threshold of the true God realm. They were far from being undying and indestructible. Even the Four Seas dragon race, which had once flourished, had to rely on their own Joss flames to barely extend their lives. When the prehistoric creatures gave them cultivation methods and entered this world, they could indeed destroy this world with a wave of their hands. Suppressing the cultivators and demonic beasts in this world was as easy as flipping their hands. But now, countless years later, could prehistoric creatures still easily suppress cultivators and demonic beasts? How was that possible? The strongest cultivators and demonic beasts in the martial heaven world were at the threshold of the true god realm. Most of the prehistoric creatures were above this realm, but they could only use this level of strength in the martial heaven world. Their only advantage was that their accompanying spirit treasures like the 99 soul-scattering gourd were much stronger than the magic treasures refined by the undeveloped refining methods of the martial heaven world. However, this wasn't the difference between a stone axe and a machine gun. The cultivators of the martial heaven world weren't pushovers. It was fine if they didn't have the ability in the past, but now that they had the ability, who would be willing to have a retired emperor above their heads? If he agreed to cooperate with the demon court, not only would the demon court not have to pay anything, he could even use the commotion that Lin Yuan had caused to extend his life. Even if Lin Yuan left the martial heaven world, the guardians of the heaven gate would still be afraid and continue to acknowledge the demon court as the retired emperor. At that time, no matter if they asked for resources from the guardians of the heaven gate or went from the dark to the light, there wouldn't be many who would dare to stand out and criticize them. Even if such people stood out, they still had Lin Yuan's promise to protect them. Although Lin Yuan was only borrowing their name, and recently, the demon court had secretly interfered with the direction of some matters, but if Lin Yuan were to step out of the heaven gate, even if it was just a name or a little interference, it would be enough to make the natives of this world keep quiet out of fear. Shifting the risk to Lin Yuan, they didn't need to pay anything and just waited for the benefits. There was such a good thing. The demon court's actions were just as the system had said. They were treating Lin Yuan like a fool. After being questioned by Lin Yuan, Daoist Red Cloud's face was a little embarrassed. He said with a cold expression, "Dragon King, what do you mean by this? Are you doubting the demon court's ability? I've already said it very clearly. As long as the Dragon King is willing to cooperate with us, all the problems that are troubling you now can be solved immediately. However, if the Dragon King is unwilling to cooperate, that means we have to die. Aren't you afraid that we? I'm just very curious. If the demon court forces the guardians of the heaven gate to stop the series of deployments against the sky demon and let them continue to exhaust the northern frontier, then I directly declare war on the demon court. Senior, which side do you think the guardians of the heaven gate will stand on?" Lin Yuan smiled and interrupted Daoist Red Cloud. The smile on Daoist Red Cloud's face froze. If this was a complete world, the guardians of the heaven gate were not even ants to them. However, the problem was that this world was not complete. Lin Yuan and those indigenous creatures could not possibly fight with them outside the heaven gate. If they were unlucky and died, it would be useless no matter how high their cultivation was. Although they were in this world, they were still outsiders. Once they died, there was no chance of reincarnation. Their souls would be directly captured back to the netherworld of the chaotic world. Destroying their souls was just a thought from Hongjun. Veins popped out on Daoist Red Cloud's forehead, and his breathing gradually became heavier. If Lin Yuan was really a member of the demon court, then no matter how bold the guardians of the heaven gate were, they would not dare to challenge the demon court. However, the problem was, Lin Yuan was not a member of the demon court. Moreover, the commotion he caused in the endless sea was not small. Although the guy in the white coat only appeared for 3 minutes, the combat power he displayed was enough to sweep through the heaven martial world. In terms of combat power, the demon court was not as terrifying as the existence behind Lin Yuan. In addition, although the demon court was gradually hiding from the world, when they were tyrannical in the heaven martial world, they had accumulated a lot of old grudges with the indigenous creatures. Just look at the dragon race of the 4 seas and you would know what the demon court was like. Back then, the demon court treated the indigenous creatures of the heaven martial world like slaves. Chapter 876. In the eyes of the natives of the Tianwu world, Lin Yuan's mysterious background was not inferior to the demon court at its peak. In fact, it was even more terrifying. If Lin Yuan declared war on the demon court, the guardians of the heavenly gate would not hesitate to stand on Lin Yuan's side. I've said it before. I don't like to take advantage of others, and I don't like others taking advantage of me. If you want to talk about cooperation, we can talk about it. However, Senior Red Cloud always treats me like a fool. Isn't that inappropriate? Lin Yuan blinked his eyes and said with a smile, Senior Red Cloud is an almighty being who was born in the desolate era. You have lived for countless years longer than me. Even if you were a pig, you should have become a spirit by now. Why do I feel that Senior Red Cloud is not wise at all? Daoist Red Cloud clenched his fists and said with gritted teeth, Dragon King, does this mean that there is no room for negotiation? We can negotiate. As long as you show your sincerity, we can negotiate. Lin Yuan's eyes were overflowing with coldness as he sneered, however, Senior is not willing to pay anything. Do you really think that your old face is useful everywhere? Why don't you go back to the desolate era and see if anyone will give you some face? Good. 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 Daoist Red Cloud was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Lin Yuan and squeezed out a voice from between his teeth, then let's wait and see. Let's see if my words today are sincere or not. Even if Daoist Red Cloud was really a good person, after being rejected by Lin Yuan time and time again, he could not put down his face. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Daoist Red Cloud snorted coldly. With a wave of his blood-red sleeve, his figure disappeared into the void behind him as if he had never appeared. I'll wait and see. Lin Yuan's face was full of a fake smile, and he said in a cold voice, it's just that it was not easy for the seniors to gain a firm foothold. Don't lose your foothold just because of a moment of anger. Although I'm a junior, I'm amenable to coaxing but not coercion. It's impossible for me to not fight back after being hit. Do you understand? As soon as he finished speaking, 7 or 8 cold snorts sounded in the void. Then, the gazes dispersed. Lin Yuan also felt much more relaxed. After all, these primitive creatures did not dare to touch him because of the great karma on him. It was not that they did not have the ability to kill him. Lin Yuan pursed his lips and stopped smiling. Only then did he swim toward the city wall that had been breached by the Great Old Ones. The trouble from the demon court had been temporarily resolved. Next, it should be the time for both sides to roll up their sleeves and show off their muscles. However, the demon court had not appeared for a long time. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had caused such a huge commotion in the endless sea. If they wanted to rely on their words to convince the guardian of the heavenly gates to continue forming a feud with Lin Yuan, it was no different from a fool's dream. They still needed a lot of time to prepare. Now, the priority was to deal with the endless sea. As the city wall was breached, more and more demonic beasts of the endless sea could not hold back. The array set up by these mental demons had long lost its effectiveness. The Eye of the God was activated, and he could observe the situation in most places in the Willowstone Fortress. Many demonic beasts of the endless sea did not go to the city wall after dealing with the demonic beasts that had come to stall them. It was as if they were not worried that this last line of defense would be breached. Only a fool would believe that these demonic beasts had no connection with the Great Old Ones. However, the existence of such demonic beasts was probably a common problem in civilized society. There would always be some who thought that they could play with everything in the palm of their hands just because they had some ability. Among such existences, 9 out of 10 were idiots whose ambitions were greater than their abilities. Lin Yuan was not interested in how others would deal with such existences. What he wanted to do next was to simply and violently destroy them. In any case, the living beings in the Tianwu world had reproduced for such a long time. Whether it was humans or demonic beasts, the population had swelled to the point that it was close to the limit that the world could bear. The various empires, the Hengduan Mountains, the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea, and various forces had always been in a state of war. The purpose of war was to reduce the population. Words like peace and prosperity did not exist in a world in such a state. Exceeding the limit of what the land could support, even if it was just one person, meant that there would be people like that person who would not be able to eat their fill. Mercy would not bring salvation, and would only cause more people to be destroyed. This world was very sick in all aspects. As time passed, more and more demonic beasts of the endless sea gathered here. After all, the current Lin Yuan was in a very awkward position in the endless sea. On one hand, they already knew that it was very difficult for them to take advantage of Lin Yuan. On the other hand, although the great old ones had been eliminated, there should still be a lot of aberrations in the endless sea, or existences that had been affected by the power of distortion but had not completed their aberrations. Without Lin Yuan's help, it would be very difficult for them to clean up these things. Moreover, if they were not careful, they might brew a disaster even more terrifying than the previous great old ones. The most important thing was that Lin Yuan was not the kind of existence without ambition. Although it was not clear what the model of Lin Yuan's city of trade was, it could be seen from the Siren Guild's recent busywork around the city of trade that the city of trade could bring huge profits. When Lin Yuan was completely tied to the Siren Guild's interests, who could get a share of the profits? As the city of trade existed longer and longer, not only did it mean that Lin Yuan had earned a lot of benefits from the endless sea, but it also meant that Lin Yuan's influence on the endless sea would grow stronger day by day, directly affecting the power structure of the various Siren clans in the deep sea area of the endless sea. They could not wait for Lin Yuan to leave, but they also hoped that Lin Yuan would clean up the aberrations. These emotions were really complicated. As for the remaining aberrations, I will deal with them. You just need to watch and think about it carefully. Why would I look for them, and if I would look for you? Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the faces of the monsters in the endless sea. His heterochromatic eyes kept showing a thoughtful look. Then he gently shook his head and his body slowly dissipated, blending into the surrounding seawater and disappearing without a trace. Most of the monsters in the endless sea present were at the Siren King realm or even the Ancestor Monster realm. Although they were all aquatic monsters, their comprehension of the way of water might not be as deep as Lin Yuan's talent. However, with the difference in cultivation between the two, they could forcibly stop Lin Yuan. But that was obviously meaningless. If Lin Yuan did not want to say, they could not ask a single word. They also had to pay attention to their words and deeds and not excessively stimulate Lin Yuan. Chapter 877. 4 hours later. Northern Frontier. In a Blackwater Dragon King temple near Mountain Blocking City. The huge flood dragon sculpture slowly opened its eyes. Its originally lifeless body was covered in a wriggling black liquid. It actually showed the characteristics of a living being. Every muscle was trembling and every scale was opening and closing. Patter. With a soft sound, a wooden carving scale fell off, and then there was patter, patter, patter. More and more wooden and stone sculptures fell off. A piece of flesh the size of an adult's forearm fell to the ground. Under the gaze of a group of temple attendants who rushed over after hearing the strange noise, that piece of flesh actually twitched and gradually transformed into a little black snake. Its entire body was covered in fine black scales. It looked like the previous sculpture that had been shrunk countless times. The little black snake shook its head. Its vertical pupils slowly turned blue and white. Only then did it regain its clarity. It said in a deep voice, "There's no need to restore the statue here for the time being. Also, inform Li Zhong to come here and see me. The matter in the endless sea could be put to rest for the time being." After all, those demon kings and ancestral demons were not existences that the current Lin Yuan could contend against. On the other hand, the battle in the northern frontier had always been tense. Just as Daoist Red Cloud said, nothing could go wrong in the northern frontier. Therefore, Lin Yuan had no choice but to delegate authority to Cyrus and the divine sense clone that controlled the puppet's body. He let his main body fall into a deep sleep again and returned to the northern frontier in the form of an avatar. This time, Lin Yuan did not choose to descend. After all, it was possible that someone who was not a believer of his would appear from some corner and call out to someone. That person would be able to intercept Lin Yuan again. After all, most of the gods in the Tianwu continent were Yin gods. For example, those loyal ministers and good generals of the ancient dynasties. Their souls would not enter the cycle of reincarnation after their death. Instead, they would be sent to the shrine of gods and gods to be nourished by the power of the nation. With some exaggeration, they would become gods one after another, similar to the wild gods in Lin Yuan's previous life. If that heavenly emperor successfully established the heavenly court, he might be able to absorb these Yin gods, just like what the heavenly court did during the investiture of the gods' cataclysm. Absorbing a bit of the Yin god's true spirit into the investiture of the gods, they would always be under his control. The real deities in the untainted world were all existences who had directly attained the origin and become saints. Some were like Pan Gu, the primordial ancient demon gods. In his previous life, the gods of the heavenly court were more like slaves than gods. Just look at the Taoist disciples of Sanqing's lineage. They used talismans to communicate with the heavens. There was no lack of Dharma access in those talismans to force the gods and the heavens to do things for them. It was only later when the heavens and earth were isolated and the path of cultivation became more and more difficult that the Taoist cultivators slowly changed from being driven to inviting the gods. However, in a world without the jurisdiction of the heavenly court, these Yin gods had great authority. To ordinary people who did not know the difference, Lin Yuan was no different from those Yin gods. Therefore, in order to not be affected, Lin Yuan had no choice but to use the backup plan he had set up in the northern frontier. When Lei Fan was in charge of building the Blackwater Dragon King Temple, Lin Yuan sealed a part of his flesh and blood in each statue. After a long period of nurturing by the power of incense, these flesh and blood would awaken their own spirituality. Together with the divine will that Lin Yuan had imbued on the statues, they would be able to evolve into something similar to an external incarnation. Even if Lin Yuan's original body died, he could use these external incarnations to come back to life. To the cultivators and demonic beasts of the Tianwu world, this method was absolutely heaven-defying. However, Lin Yuan's Taoism was after all a part of the untainted world. This kind of behavior was already basic in the untainted world. For example, the Nether River Patriarch who almost ate Taoist Red Cloud was the most disgusting one. Originally, he was born from a placenta that was born in the Nether Blood Sea. He was born with great magical powers. Later on, he used his great magical powers to completely merge himself with the Nether Blood Sea. In the untainted world, he was known as long as the Blood Sea does not dry up, Nether River will not die. Preparing an external incarnation to come back to life was really a basic operation in the untainted world. Lin Yuan was just doing something that everyone would do. Compared to the Nether River Patriarch's method of merging himself with the Nether Blood Sea, Lin Yuan's method of cutting off his own flesh and separating his divine sense was not that ruthless. This time, he had activated an outer body incarnation in advance and used this method to return to the northern region. However, not only did this body not have the strength of his original body, which was at the 8th level of the desolate demon realm, it was also ridiculously weak. Even a slightly stronger beast could easily prey on him, and he still needed a large amount of Joss flames to recover his strength. However, the Joss flames in his original body had almost been used up. Although this statue had also been influenced by the Joss flames, it had not broken the seal by itself after it had developed its own spirituality. It was barely better than nothing, and would not be of much use. Therefore, before confirming his safety, Lin Yuan could only stay in this Blackwater Dragon King Temple. After all, this was mountain-blocking city, and there were many humans and demon beasts here. If he ran into someone who did not know his place, he would lose an external incarnation for nothing. Although his strength had not recovered, his flesh and blood came from his original body after all. A black snake with the blood of a flood dragon and without the ability to resist walking outside was a delicacy in the eyes of those beasts with low spiritual intelligence. Even those demonic beasts with a certain level of spiritual intelligence might not be able to overcome the greed in their hearts. "Yes, I'll go right away." The temple attendant bowed to Lin Yuan and ordered the people he brought to guard the main hall. Only then did he hurriedly leave. After rounds of cleaning up in the northern frontier, those who could still work in the Blackwater Dragon King Temple were almost all existences created by Lin Yuan using the soldier creation model. Although their growth was extremely slow, their loyalty was unquestionable. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would not want these external incarnations of his to fall into the hands of those with evil intentions and become a means to suppress him. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly remembered that when he first tracked down the Sky Demon, he found some black liquid in the elixir of immortality. It was similar to the Nether Realm's black water in his hand, but there seemed to be a big difference. However, it was indeed the power of the underworld. In addition, the Sky Demon did not have a physical body and was only in existence with intelligence born from evil thoughts and evil thoughts. When all these clues gathered together, they pointed to the Eldritch world. With a light flick of its tail, a Sky Demon assimilated by the Nether Realm's black water condensed and respectfully bowed to Lin Yuan. "You don't need to answer my question. You only need to nod." Lin Yuan looked at the Sky Demon and said with a serious expression. Chapter 878. I've guessed your origin, but I need your confirmation. You don't have to speak or think too much. If the information I give you is correct, you just have to nod. If I'm satisfied, I'll send you into the cycle of reincarnation first when the underworld is created. Lin Yuan gazed at the Sky Demon that was assimilated by the black water of the underworld realm. Pictograms formed by demonic power appeared in the void one after another. There was no unified language or writing in the Eldritch world. Most of them communicated with each other through spiritual thoughts, similar to the skill "all things have spirit." However, some Eldritch world creatures that had lived long enough had evolved a set of characters and languages that belonged to the Eldritch world based on Sangjia's writing. Although Lin Yuan did not understand those, he had studied the most ancient pictograms in his previous life. Using pictograms to communicate with the Eldritch world creatures was a little obscure, but it was not a big problem. After a while, Lin Yuan exhaled a long breath of turbid air. He was sure that the source of these Sky Demon was the Nether River Ancestor. The Nether River Ancestor was not the strongest in the Eldritch world, but his body had merged with the Nether Blood Sea. Unless the Nether Blood Sea was completely destroyed, the Nether River Ancestor was immortal. In the legends of the Eldritch world, the Nether River Ancestor had heard Hongjuan's preaching. Since Goddess Nviwa created the human race and became a saint, the Nether River Ancestor had also created the Azura tribe. However, they did not become a saint. Later, they were reintroduced into the Nether Blood Sea and did not appear in the world. Even the Azura religion did not leave many traces in the Eldritch world. However, although the Nether River Ancestor kept a low profile, it did not mean that he was not targeted by others. The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who came from the Buddhism sect and swore that he would not become a Buddha until the hell was empty, was an old enemy of the Nether River Ancestor. In addition to managing the operation of the Nether world, this guy also copied scriptures and chanted Buddha beside the Nether Blood Sea day and night, leading the Azura tribe to convert to Buddhism. The Azura tribe existed in the demigods and semi-devils of the future. He had just met Red Cloud Taoist, but he did not expect to meet another old enemy of Red Cloud Taoist. However, what did this old guy want to do? The doctrine of the Azura sect was very simple. It was a single word: kill. Kill the heavens, kill the earth, kill all living beings. The gist of it was that if the Nether River Patriarch could kill everything, he would attain Tao. However, although the Nether River Patriarch's slogan was loud and clear, his strength was indeed nothing in the primeval world apart from being immortal and indestructible. When the three races were powerful and Rahu appeared out of nowhere and stirred up the world's calamity, the Nether River Patriarch was cultivating in the blood sea of the Nether underworld. During the war between the shamans and the demons were too powerful, and the Nether River Patriarch was still cultivating in the Nether blood sea. The primordial calamity was endless, and this man who swore to become the primordial calamity often hid in the netherworld blood sea because of his insufficient fighting strength. The Sky of Freedom, Sun, Sky of Desire, Brahma, Shiva, and the others were all disciples of the Nether River Patriarch, and their reputations were even greater than the Nether River Patriarch's. Moreover, almost all of these Asura tribe members defected to Buddhism, and not many stayed by the Nether River Patriarch's side. Although many of the Asura tribe defected to Buddhism, the Nether River Patriarch might not necessarily convert. After all, the blood sea of the Nether underworld was a forbidden land created by Pangu's navel. It was said that fish and prawns did not live there, insects and birds did not live there, and it gathered the evil chi of heaven and earth to form a blood sea. The Nether River Patriarch had fused with the blood sea of the Nether underworld blood sea, and it was destined that he would not convert to Buddhism, unless Buddhism really had a heaven-shaking divine ability that even great god Pangu could not contend against. Instead of hiding in his blood sea of the Nether underworld, this old guy kept instructing the Sky Demon to attack the Sky Martial World. He's coming for Red Cloud. Lin Yuan tilted his head, and in the end, he could only think of this possibility. The karma of the Eldritch world could not be escaped. Back then, Red Cloud had calculated everything, including Western Urshi, Demon Master Kuan Peng and the Nether River Patriarch, and used them to destroy his physical body in the Eldritch world, and used the 9-9 soul-scattering gourd to protect his soul to escape to the Sky Martial world. This karma could not be pursued by Western Urshi and the Demon Master Kuan Peng. With their current strength, they definitely could not descend to the Sky Martial world. However, the Nether River Patriarch was different. Not only did he fail to eat Daoist Red Cloud, but he was also schemed against. It was very likely that the Nether River Patriarch could not take this lying down, and chasing him to the Sky Martial world was very normal. However, the problem was, the Sky Demon's origin was the Nether River Patriarch, and his target was most likely Daoist Red Cloud. In that case, who was the outer deity that was hiding in the northern frontier and also used the underworld's power? If it was other Eldritch World's creatures that were chasing him, Lin Yuan would suspect that they were trying to deal with him. However, the Nether River Patriarch was different. This guy was very obedient from the beginning. He would definitely not provoke trouble that he did not need to. Even if he knew that Lin Yuan was the heaven's chosen one, he would not attack Lin Yuan unless he received orders from Hong Jun. Was it an Eldritch World's creature? Or a native creature of the Sky Martial world? Or an existence from another world? More importantly, ever since Lin Yuan returned to the northern frontier, he discovered that the connection between him and Badu had been severed. The power of incense was still being supplied, and the buff from the true dragon, the Son of Heaven, was still ongoing. However, he could not sense where Badu was. It was as if Badu had disappeared into thin air. The same was true for the outer deity. Lin Yuan could smell the underworld's power in the air and was certain that it did not belong to him. However, he was unable to trace the source of the underworld's power. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were blocking his vision. At that moment, a series of muffled footsteps could be heard from outside. Lin Yuan dodged almost instinctively and hid behind the group of wood and stone sculptures. He frowned and looked at the door. The invisible interference was getting stronger and stronger. The eye of the god could only observe the scene inside the Blackwater Dragon King Temple. This was because of the existence of his own divine power that the strange underworld's power did not corrode the place. When he looked outside, it wasn't that he couldn't see it, but it was like a television with a bad signal. The image flickered from time to time, and the image was constantly changing, making it impossible to determine what was outside. I've only been away for a while, and the northern frontier has already been corroded to this extent. As expected of an existence with a mission list. It seems that it's even more powerful than I thought. Looking at the door being pushed open bit by bit, Lin Yuan's body arched slightly, ready to launch an attack at any time. He did not know how long it would take to completely clean up the underworld's power. It was best to find the other party as soon as possible and kill the main body directly. Otherwise, under the underworld's power, the northern frontier would gradually be transformed into an underworld unsuitable for living creatures to live in. Chapter 879. The door to the main hall was slowly pushed open, and a weary Li Zhong strolled into the hall. There was a wisp of black gas between his eyebrows, and it looked like he had lost quite a bit of weight. After carefully sensing it for a moment, Lin Yuan realized that Li Zhong's realm had dropped quite a bit, and he was almost unable to maintain his Heaven Star realm cultivation. Li Zhong cultivated a special technique, and his cultivation was closely related to the situation in the northern frontier. The stronger Li Zhong was, the more prosperous the northern frontier would be. It seemed like the situation in the northern frontier was worse than he had imagined. Lord Dragon King. With Li Zhong's current strength, it wasn't difficult for him to detect Lin Yuan's presence. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, and controlled his avatar to jump onto the debris. He looked at Li Zhong in confusion. Why did he feel like Li Zhong was going to die if he didn't come back? Lord Dragon King, it's good that you're back. Li Zhong lowered his head silently, and said with a trembling voice, Li Zhong has let down Dragon King's trust. The northern frontier is now filled with corpses, and the various departments are in chaos. The decree issued by the northern frontier lord's mansion has become a piece of scrap paper. If it wasn't for the sky demon retreating to the south, the northern frontier would have turned into a living hell. Not long ago, the evil god in the Hengduan Mountains was born. I was also helpless and could only watch as it wreaked havoc. I hope the Dragon King will punish me. The Hengduan Mountains, the evil god was born. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked doubtfully, apart from such an evil being in his territory, did Beast Master Kirin not express his stance? Li Zhong sighed softly and said in a deep voice, on the day the evil god was born, the Beast Lord Kirin came out of seclusion and fought with him. They fought for 7 days and 7 nights without a clear winner. In the end, the evil god used some unknown means to instigate the rebellion of the powerful demonic beasts in the Hengduan Mountains. Those demonic beasts sneakily attacked the Beast Lord Kirin from behind, causing the Beast Lord Kirin to be seriously injured and retreat. Now he is still recuperating in Enchanting City. If it weren't for the Beast Lord Kirin, I'm afraid I wouldn't even be able to maintain the prince's mansion in the northern frontier. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids slightly, and the doubt in his eyes deepened. If the Beast Lord Kirin didn't take action or put on an act, he could still accept it. After all, according to his speculation, the Beast Lord Kirin was most likely a member of the Demon Court. It was just that he didn't know if he was a primordial creature or a descendant of a primordial creature that escaped to the Tianwu world. Although the Beast Lord Kirin had helped Lin Yuan before, if Lin Yuan insisted on not cooperating with the Demon Court, it was only a matter of time before the entire Demon Court was destroyed. However, the Beast Lord Kirin had already taken action when the Outer God appeared, and he had the upper hand in every aspect. If not for the betrayal of his subordinates, the Outer God wouldn't have been able to threaten the northern frontier before it was suppressed by the Beast Lord Kirin. After that, the Beast Lord Kirin stayed in Enchanting City to recuperate. At the same time, he helped Li Zhong stabilize the northern frontier's position as the ruler of the northern frontier. He didn't let the Outer God completely invade the northern frontier. At the very least, when Lin Yuan returned to the northern frontier, there were still some people he could dispatch. He didn't have to sort out a chaotic territory from scratch. The Beast Lord Kirin wasn't a member of the Demon Court. Or did the beast Lord Kirin have a falling out with the demon court? Tell me about that evil god. Lin Yuan let out a long sigh. His expression was somewhat gloomy. That evil god. Do you still remember the first-generation sky demon that escaped into the Hengduan Mountains? According to my information, this evil god might be the first-generation sky demon. We have checked all the humans and monsters that entered and exited the Hengduan Mountains during this period of time, and we can answer them one by one. The beast Lord Kirin also said that the other party wasn't an outer god that existed in the Hengduan Mountains, so it could only be an outer god that hid in the Hengduan Mountains during this period of time. Your subordinate has thought about it for a long time, and only the first-generation heavenly demon whose whereabouts were unknown back then fit this description. However, at the beginning, we still had the upper hand. After multiple investigations and repeated confirmations, we can be sure that the mysterious president of the Fu-Bei Society is most likely Lei Fan, who was executed by the sect of the Divine Blood. After confirming this, I went to look for the old ancestor of the Church of the Blood God, Yang Qinglin. However, after searching through the entire Church of the Blood God, I found that he had left the northern frontier for a long time. Therefore, I can't be sure if the Church of the Blood God has any connection with that evil god. Also, the first-generation Sky Demon and Lei Fan seem to have merged into one. The Sky Demon's soul is immortal and indestructible. In addition to the immortal body that the evil god bestowed upon his followers, Lei Fan is an invincible existence every time he appears on the battlefield. There is no way to kill him. No matter how strong the cultivators or monsters that I send out, they can only delay him. If we don't retreat in time, we might even be killed by him. Other than Lei Fan himself, he also has a large army of immortals under his command. The identities of these people can be confirmed. They are basically the remaining disciples of the sects and aristocratic families from the northern frontier. There are also the bandits and horse bandits from the northern frontier, wandering martial artists, and even some of the Frost Mirror Barbarian and Shenlin Jun's remnant troops. The people are all mixed up, but the only thing they have in common is that they hate us to the core. Li Zhong's tone was hurried as he spoke of all the information that he knew. Immortal soul, immortal body. And even able to create an army of immortals. How could this be possible? Lin Yuan smiled bitterly as he shook his head. He looked towards the horizon and said with a cold smile, "This is not the work of the first-generation Sky Demon. Even if the source of the Sky Demon were to come, he might not dare to do this. The one who wants to deal with me is most likely someone else. The Dragon King, do you have any clues?" Li Zhong was slightly taken aback. Clearly, he had not expected Lin Yuan to so quickly overturn the conclusion that he had come to after many rounds of investigation. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said with a gloomy look in his eyes, "Li Zhong, you are a smart person. You should have long seen that I am not a living being born from this world. So, sooner or later, I will have to leave this world. Once you are certain of this, you will be able to suppress your ambitions and serve me well. Because you are certain that you are no match for me. Rashly taking action for the sake of your ambitions will only cause you to end up like the previous two kings of the northern frontier. Even at this point, before I am completely eliminated, you can still maintain your loyalty to me. Li Zhong, you are indeed a ruthless person." As his voice fell, Li Zhong's eyes narrowed slightly, but his expression did not change in the slightest. He said calmly, "I do not deny what Lord Dragon King has said. But I do not know what this has to do with the predicament that we are facing now. Please enlighten me, Dragon King." Phew, Lin Yuan let out a long breath and said with a cold smile, "That old bastard does not have such courage. And even if he comes, the first person he will target will not be me. His old rival will take care of him. Originally, I was not sure, but now, the northern frontier is about to become the underworld. If I don't know who is behind this, then I am really a fool." Chapter 880. Be it cultivators or demonic beasts, no one liked the appearance of the underworld. After all, after the appearance of the underworld, once the god of the underworld was in place, the cycle of reincarnation would slowly be completed. At that time, once you died, it meant that you would enter the cycle of reincarnation. Even if you had the cultivation of an immortal when you were alive, you would still be reduced to a mortal after reincarnation. There would be no such thing as Yang Qinglin and the Fire Kirin setting up a trap before they died and then reviving after a period of time. In the entire Sky Martial world, the only thing that was eager to create the underworld to restore the world was the will of the world. No wonder the will of the world still gave him the mission to lead him to the south, to find the existence who set up the evil formation. It was probably hoping that this mission would be able to hold him back and complete the transformation of the northern frontier into the underworld. It was also at this time that the system on his body issued a divine war mission. The purpose was to remind him to return to the northern frontier and stop the transformation of the northern frontier. Otherwise, he would unknowingly fall into the trap and become the underworld king of the Sky Martial world. At that time, he wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Dog system, come out. Lin Yuan's chest heaved up and down, and his face was gloomy to the extreme. I'm still expanding my territory in the Endless Sea, and you're already invading my home. Li Mu thought. Damn it. If it wasn't for the matter in the Endless Sea being resolved quickly, even if Lin Yuan noticed this, he wouldn't have been able to rush back in time. After all, he couldn't leave his main body in the dangerous area where the Great Old Ones were running rampant, and he couldn't give up his investment in the Endless Sea and directly turn around to extinguish the fire in the northern frontier. After all, if he didn't take this opportunity to take root in the Endless Sea, it was hard to say if he would have another chance to enter in the future. Lin Yuan, are you King arrogant? Do you think I'm like your personal little secretary who revolves around you every day? If you have anything to fart, just say it. I'm falling out. Lin Yuan said in his heart, open your eyes and take a look at what has been done to the northern frontier. If I hadn't come back, I might have really become the underworld king of this world. I can see that they don't care about you at all. They're trying to test me out and find out that I don't want to stay here and be the underworld king. They're trying to force me onto the ship, so why don't you even dare to make a sound? What are you trying to do? The system was silent for a moment before it slowly displayed. It wasn't completely ignorant of what the world will had done. Otherwise, it wouldn't have issued a mission to Lin Yuan, reminding him to go back to the northern frontier to take a look. However, it really didn't expect that Lin Yuan wouldn't even try, and would just lie down and call for it. If the heavenly Tao of the two worlds were to fight, that would be a huge joke. Besides, it wasn't that it didn't have other things to do. Right now, it still had to deal with Hongjun. If it was too arrogant, the heavenly Tao of the other worlds wouldn't be so easy to deal with. If it weren't for the fact that Lin Yuan was the most special host among its many hosts, and that it had high hopes of eliminating Hongjun, it wouldn't have bothered with Lin Yuan at all. Are you going to do something about this? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes, and there was a glint in his eyes. How am I going to do something about this? Don't you know what it means to have no choice but to lower your head when you're under someone else's roof? We're using their territory to raise people. If they didn't take a fancy to you, then everything would be fine. However, now that things have come to this, everyone is in trouble. If I help, how are we going to use the myriad worlds to raise strong people to fight against Hongjun in the future? Why, are you so sure that you can take down Hongjun alone? The system was also a little aggrieved. Ever since the will of this world set its sights on Lin Yuan, it really didn't give the system any face at all. Now, it was even brazenly snatching people away, but the system still didn't dare to fall out with it because of its concerns. It could only count on Lin Yuan to solve these problems himself. It's fine if you don't want to deal with it. I'll do it myself. If it can do this, why can't I do the same? Lin Yuan's narrowed eyes opened slightly, and a cold smile appeared on his face. A ball of white light gushed out from between Lin Yuan's eyebrows, and almost in the blink of an eye, it entered between the eyebrows of Li Zhong, who was standing opposite of Lin Yuan and waiting for him to continue. Li Zhong swayed slightly, and directly knelt on the ground. His breathing gradually became heavier, and he constantly digested the huge stream of information that had squeezed into his mind. "You're crazy." The system's three big words appeared, and a strange power gushed out from Lin Yuan's body, instantly enveloping Li Zhong. It really didn't expect that Lin Yuan would be so bold. In the blink of an eye, he directly transmitted the scripture of life into Li Zhong's sea of consciousness. If it wasn't for the system's concealment, the heavenly tribulation would have landed on Lin Yuan and Li Zhong. The cold light in Lin Yuan's eyes was still biting cold, and he thought to himself, "Didn't it want to force me to be the Nether King? Then from today onwards, I'll impart the scripture of life in the Sky Martial continent. I want to see if it can still tolerate me." Crazy, if the system had a physical body, its face would be filled with helplessness. The world will of the Sky Martial continent and Lin Yuan were like two madmen competing with each other, constantly challenging each other's bottom line. Only the system was stuck in the middle, with no one to its left or right. At this time, it had already digested the huge stream of information in its mind. It stood up shakily, and its face was filled with bewilderment. Lin Yuan had only imparted a portion of the scripture of life to Li Zhong. This cultivation technique came from the great god Pan Gu, and was not in existence similar to other cultivation techniques. After Pan Gu split the heavens and earth apart, he created all living things, and this cultivation technique was the same. Every time he created an ancient desolate era creature, he would create a cultivation technique suitable for that creature. This was one of the foundations of the ancient desolate era creatures. "Lord Dragon King, this is..." Li Zhong took a deep breath, and his face was slightly flushed. The stream of information that Lin Yuan had imparted to him wasn't just a simple cultivation technique. Within it, there were even records of the path to becoming a god. This cultivation technique's grade was definitely above any other cultivation technique in the Sky Martial continent. Even if one's cultivation had reached the transcendent realm, they would still be able to continue cultivating. There was no need to leave the Sky Martial continent to find other paths. It's just a cultivation technique that can be found on the streets. There's no need to be so excited. Also, Lin Yuan shook his head and said with a smile, "This world is incomplete." Incomplete means that there's a limit to the amount of power it can carry. Although you have the subsequent path to becoming a god, you still have to leave this world in the future if you want to take that step. Otherwise, you can only wait for this world to complete itself. Nobody knows how long that would take. Li Zhong was speechless. Li Zhong didn't dare to speak for a moment. A cultivation technique that recorded the path to becoming a god was just a cultivation technique that could be found on the streets in Lin Yuan's eyes. However, this thought only lasted for a moment. Li Zhong realized that Lin Yuan wasn't just joking. Chapter 881. Li Zhong looked at Lin Yuan with blurred eyes, feeling that his brain was buzzing. He felt that the Dragon King had suddenly become strange after returning from his trip to the Endless Sea. Not to mention that the moment he returned, he overturned the information that he had worked so hard to confirm. Now, he even taught him a set of techniques, but from the beginning to the end, he did not say how to deal with the evil god that was transforming the northern frontier into the underworld. He could not just do nothing and let the evil god disappear on its own, right? "Lord Dragon King, about that evil god, Li Zhong took 2 deep breaths, calmed his agitated mind, and said in a deep voice, "You may not understand the situation in the northern frontier. That guy is using some unknown method to transform the land in the northern frontier bit by bit. Other than Shunning City, which is protected by the Beast Lord Kirin, and the area around the Blackwater Dragon King Temple, most of the land has become a dead land. No matter how good the seeds are planted, they will wither and die in a few days. Some demonic beasts with high cultivation are still fine, but wild beasts are now extinct in the northern frontier. They can't farm or hunt. Now, the northern frontier has started to eat the stored food. After a while, the northern frontier will have to buy food from other empires. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce had been crazily absorbing resources and wealth from other empires. However, Lin Yuan's strength and fierce reputation were there. The demonic beasts in the Hingduan mountain range also did not recognize other caravans. Even if others wanted to copy Lin Yuan's idea, they could not do it. This also meant that the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was in a state of almost monopolization. However, now that the northern frontier had suffered such a disaster, the other dynasties would definitely not let go of this opportunity. They would definitely extort a huge sum from the northern frontier. He didn't have to worry about the loss of resources for now. After all, the northern frontier's inventory was still quite rich. Moreover, as long as he could solve this problem, the 6 empires would have to spit out all the benefits they had received from the northern frontier. What he was worried about was that the 6 empires would use some dirty methods, such as deliberately delaying the delivery of the goods or using some old or rotten grain to do a half-hearted job. When that happened, many people would die again. Then what do you want me to do? Lin Yuan looked up at Li Zhong, only to find that the man's face was full of nervousness at the moment. He couldn't help but pause, and then said, "Before I left the northern region, I gave you a lot of Ming realm black water. Since then, you should know that the power of the northern region that is being transformed at this moment overlaps with my power to a considerable extent, right? If I were to act rashly, not only would I not be able to save the northern frontier, it would also deepen the transformation of the northern frontier into the underworld." At this point, Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said with a gloomy face, "To solve this problem, we have to find the whereabouts of the evil god, then kill him and destroy his source. Only then will we be able to stop the transformation of the northern frontier into the underworld. Then, we have to think of a way to draw on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and slowly wash away the underworld energy. Only then can the northern frontier be restored." That evil god, Li Zhong had just opened his mouth when he was stopped by Lin Yuan's glare. Lin Yuan shook his head lightly and stopped Li Zhong's words. His face was solemn as he said, "We don't know where that evil god is hiding. Don't believe what you see with your own eyes. Lei Fan and the first sky demon have indeed been merged together. But that is just one of the evil god's tricks. It does not mean that this fella that is a fusion of 2 monsters is the true body of the evil god. Refining Lei Fan's body into an undead corpse puppet, then using a great divine ability to capture the first sky demon's spiritual body and merge the 2 together. As long as he could bewitch the other party, it would not take much effort to create a target that would attract the attention of many people. First, bring me back to the city to have a look." Lin Yuan let out a long breath and ordered. Li Zhong's footsteps paused for a moment before he said helplessly, "Most of the human settlements in the northern frontier have already fallen. Those people and demonic beasts who did not evacuate in time have either been torn apart by the immortals or have been assimilated into the immortals. Other than Shunning City, which is under the protection of the Beast Lord Kirin, only the Blackwater Dragon King temples built in various places in the northern frontier can provide shelter. If you want to go back to the city, you mean the entire northern frontier has almost fallen." Lin Yuan almost choked to death from the vulgarities that were about to come out of his mouth. So, if it were not for his plan in the south which went smoothly and led the Sky Demon's main forces to the south, the northern frontier would have completely fallen. Zhongshan City, Taicang City, Shunning City, and Donglin City, these 4 major districts are still under our control. As for the remaining small and medium-sized settlements, we have taken the initiative to give them up. The combat power of the immortals is not strong, and they are evenly matched with those of the same level, or even slightly weaker. But the problem is that we have no way to kill the immortals. Only the areas under the protection of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple are where the immortals do not dare to step into. In addition, we have sprinkled a lot of Nether Realm Blackwater around several major districts. With the Nether River creatures that you have bestowed upon us, and with the help of cultivators and demonic beasts, we can defend those districts. Li Zhong looked a little ashamed. After all, Lin Yuan had left behind so many trump cards. Logically speaking, it should be enough to keep the northern frontier airtight. In the end, he could not even hold on for half a year, and the northern frontier almost completely fell into the hands of the immortals. F***ck. Lin Yuan suddenly cursed and said in a deep voice, "Inform the people nearby to gather and take refuge in a safe area. This place is not safe anymore." Those immortals were created by another nether god, so they would instinctively loathe his aura. If they did not receive an order, they would not attack the Blackwater Dragon King Temple. But now that he had activated this avatar, without the help of the power of incense to restore his strength, it meant that the divine power he left here had dissipated. Soon, the aura of living creatures nearby would stimulate those immortals to swarm over crazily. Lin Yuan, who was half a step into the realm of the Nether God, understood these immortals the best. Compared to the desire to eat fresh flesh in the novels of his previous life, the immortals had more feelings toward living creatures. In fact, they hated living creatures more, similar to, "I'm already dead, so why are you still alive?" Once they encountered living creatures, it was equivalent to a fight to the death. Lord Dragon King, Lord Wong of the Northern Frontier, just now, a lot of immortals came and have surrounded us. The temple attendant stumbled into the main hall, cold sweat seeping out of his forehead. Hearing this bad news, Lin Yuan felt his head sink a lot. He forced himself to be alert and asked, "Immediately gather everyone, no matter if they are cultivators or ordinary people. Tell them that no matter how well they hide, they can't fool those immortals. If they don't cooperate with us, only death awaits them." Chapter 882. Zhanshan City had already fallen. Although he didn't know what was going on in the Hingduan Mountains, what was certain was that the Northern Army and the demon beasts were basically hopeless. At this juncture, those with a bit of ability would try to run towards Shunning City, or directly go out and look for the southern expedition. That place was much safer than the Hingduan Mountains where the Undyings were wreaking havoc. Therefore, in the vicinity of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple in Zhanshan City, either those who had a duty like the temple attendant couldn't run away, or those who didn't have the ability to travel a long distance couldn't escape. Therefore, they were trapped in the vicinity of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple. Lin Yuan really didn't have much hope for these people's fighting strength. Building temporary fortifications and waiting for the other garrisons to receive the news and come to support was obviously not feasible. Not to mention whether these people could hold on for a long time, Lin Yuan just carefully calculated. There were many fierce people in the Blackwater army who could break through the enemy's formation, but the problem was that these Undyings couldn't be killed at all. Their intelligence wasn't high, and their morale was completely non-existent. In this situation where the two armies were facing each other, they were almost like rogues. They couldn't be killed, and they couldn't be dispersed. Therefore, even if those fierce people came, it would be good enough if he could kill his way out. Wanting to take away these survivors who were staying near the Blackwater Dragon King Temple was tantamount to a fool's dream. Li Zhong, are there any large gathering places of the Undyings nearby? Lin Yuan turned his head to look at Li Zhong and asked in a deep voice. After all, the current strength of this body was not much stronger than a wild beast. The eye of the god was disturbed by the dark energy, so running around with his eyes closed was no different from courting death. To the north, there is a forest near the Hingduan Mountains. There are tens of thousands of humanoid immortals with white bodies. They move very fast, like apes in the forest. Because they always make hungry sounds and like to drag their prey into the forest to tear and devour, we call that forest the Forest of the Hungry Dead. A little to the east is a pitch-black plain. That used to be a part of mountain-blocking city, but now all the crops have died. What grew out of the ground are pale and broken human arms. Once you enter that area by mistake, you will be grabbed by those arms and even torn to shreds. That place is called the Earth Plain by us. Li Zhong carefully recalled for a moment, and then said with certainty, there are only these two powerful gathering places of the undead near mountain-blocking city. However, other than the areas we still control, the other gathering places in the northern frontier rarely contact us. Due to the shortage of manpower, they haven't come here to investigate the situation for some time. I'm not sure if there are any new gathering places of the undead, but when I came here, I followed the old map I drew in the past and didn't see any powerful characters. Forest of the Undead, Earth Plain. Lin Yuan's eyes looked a little cold, and he said in a deep voice, go to the places you control. These two areas are the only way. You can't only consider how to evacuate the cultivators above the airborne realm. What about the ordinary people and cultivators below the airborne realm? Are you, as the king of the northern frontier, just going to watch them die? Although Li Zhong looked a little embarrassed and tired, he still had the cultivation of the Heaven Dipper realm. Under full power, the speed of flying in the air was much faster than the fighter jets in Lin Yuan's previous life. Moreover, there was no need to consider the terrain, so naturally, he could take any route. However, although the people gathered near the Blackwater Dragon King Temple had not yet gathered, Lin Yuan was sure that ordinary people definitely occupied the majority. The remaining cultivators and monsters were probably not very high in cultivation. They might not even have reached the airborne realm, so they could only walk obediently. This meant that he had to choose between the forest of the undead and the earth plain. Li Zhong rubbed his face a little irritably and said in a deep voice, Lord Dragon King, you can't say it like that. Sometimes, it's necessary to give up. Beautiful reunion stories only exist in stories. Reality has always been bloody. In my opinion, all the people here are not as important as 1/10,000th of you, so, **t. Lin Yuan interrupted Li Zhong with an expressionless face and said with a gloomy face, the path of retreat is for ordinary people. Since you bear the title of the Northern Frontier King, you have to bear the responsibility of the Northern Frontier King. Necessary sacrifices can be made, but you don't even think of a way and directly announce to give up on those ordinary people and low-level cultivators. This kind of behavior, what's the difference between this and surrendering without a fight? Li Zhong pursed his lips and did not say anything. I'll give you 300 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators. Find a way to mix them into the team and be responsible for clearing the way and clearing the approaching undead. I don't ask you to bring everyone out alive, but I hope you can do some self-reflection and think about how you should be responsible for your own people as the king of the northern frontier. The 300 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators that Lin Yuan mentioned were chosen from the temple attendants and guards of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple. After all, they were created by the system. He directly imbued them with attribute points and let them get used to their new powers. Soon, they would be able to join the battle. Li Zhong did not doubt Lin Yuan's methods. He just instinctively felt that Lin Yuan was acting very strange after returning. Not only did he impart a very profound cultivation technique to him, but the choice at this moment was also not in line with his style. It was not that Lin Yuan did not care about human lives in the past. It was just that Lin Yuan would usually choose the most efficient and most beneficial choice for himself. But now, could it be that these ordinary people and low-level cultivators were more beneficial to Lin Yuan if they were alive? Li Zhong could not understand this point. After all, 300 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators might not be able to protect the people here and escape unscathed. However, it would not take long for them to kill everyone here. Even if everything went smoothly and they could bring everyone here away, it would be a huge loss if more than 10 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators died in the battle. How did they calculate this debt? In cents. Seeing Li Zhong's puzzled look, Lin Yuan calmly reminded him. The reason why the people here could survive the fall of Zhanshan City and the other colonies was because of the protection of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple. As long as they could continue to live, it was only a matter of time before they became his followers. Moreover, the power of incense did not depend on cultivation level. The amount of power of incense produced at each level of faith was fixed. The more people there were, the more power of incense would be produced. There was no such thing as a single person being able to fight against an army of thousands. Purely from the perspective of incense, it would be a profit if 80% of these 300 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators survived. Chapter 883. Li Zhong pondered for a moment before nodding indifferently. He turned around and walked toward the temple, preparing to deploy the formation. Although he was far from the point where he needed to accumulate the power of incense, the foundation that Lin Yuan had laid for him was not bad. Coupled with the cultivation method that Lin Yuan had just passed down, those people of the northern frontier who had set up temples for him, the northern frontier king, would become his source of incense. As long as the northern frontier was strong enough, becoming a true god would be a sure thing. Although the Blackwater Dragon King Temple was not small, it was not worth mentioning compared to the northern frontier. Although it sheltered many people, it added up to only about 10,000 people, and most of them were ordinary people without cultivation. A few cultivators were mixed in the team, and most of them were at the mortal evolution state. Even the airborne state was not very common. Moreover, their clothes did not look luxurious. All kinds of leather and iron armor were mixed together. It was hard to say how defensive it was, but it was really ugly. These low-level cultivators were at the bottom of the cultivation realm. Even mortal evolution state cultivators were only slightly stronger and faster than ordinary people. Even if they hadn't stepped into the cultivation realm, some powerful martial artists could deal with them. In a battle between cultivation forces, these people weren't even considered cannon fodder. Even if they had a few lives, it wouldn't be enough to survive a battle. Let's go. Li Zhong's voice sounded from afar. The Northern Region King took the lead and personally led 50 Heavenly Dipper realm cultivators to form a spearhead. Taking advantage of the fact that the immortals hadn't piled up to the point of numbing one's scalp, they threw out all kinds of spells as if they were free. Their weapons were also accompanied by dense aura energy. Even cultivators of the same realm wouldn't dare to take this level of attack head-on. However, to those undead, it was no different from a slap from a child. They did not even have the intention to dodge. In an instant, a large number of them were sent flying. However, their injuries were not serious. Although it seemed that their flesh was torn and their bones were shattered, they had mostly healed before the undead could get up. The most ridiculous thing was that among these undead, there were many who had their limbs cut off, and at this moment, they were rapidly growing new limbs. The terrifying recovery ability made Lin Yuan's scalp numb. In the past, when he relied on the underworld creatures to bully people, he did not feel it. Now that he suddenly encountered something as disgusting as them, he realized that he did not have any good way to deal with these guys. The low-level cultivators who were slowly moving forward in the group, as well as warriors, hunters, and other existences who relied on force to make a living, reacted at this moment. They took the specially strengthened spears from the hands of the old, weak, women, and children walking in the middle of the group. Before the undead could completely stand up, they fiercely thrust the spears in their hands and directly nailed the undead to the ground. Lin Yuan could clearly see that although the undead's movements were temporarily restricted, their flesh and blood were constantly squirming, as if they were trying to squeeze out the spears that pierced their flesh and blood. It seemed that those special spears would not be able to last long. The remaining Heavenly Dipper state cultivators, as well as the airborne realm cultivators who were selected from the survivors, all kept running along the group, knocking away the undead who were trying to struggle out one by one, or adding a stab to the undead who were still struggling. Overall, the momentum was not bad. If nothing unexpected happened, it would not be difficult to kill their way out of the encirclement of these undead. The main problem now was whether to take a detour into the Hingduan Mountains and pass through to a safe area, or to pass through the Hungry Ghost Forest and the Earth Plain and fight. After all, there were not many routes to choose from after bringing these ordinary people and low-level cultivators. Moreover, the current information on the northern frontier was so vague that it made people's hair stand on end. Other than those dangerous areas that were already known, there were no other dangers or the situation inside the Hingduan Mountains. These are all walking corpses, the lowest level of undead. They don't have high spiritual intelligence and are only slightly stronger than ordinary beasts. Moreover, these things have no vision and mainly rely on their sense of smell and hearing to track their prey. In addition to these characteristics, they are extremely strong and walk like they are flying. One step is already comparable to 3 or 4 steps of ordinary people on our side. The temple attendant in charge of protecting Lin Yuan softly introduced the characteristics of these undead to Lin Yuan and slowly said, "If you encounter these walking corpses on flat ground, even low-level cultivators may not be able to escape. After all, these things are very vengeful and have excellent patience. When they are sure that they can catch up with their prey, they will not give up no matter what. In contrast, humans need to rest." Lin Yuan wrapped around the temple attendant's arm and wondered, the undead in the vicinity seem to be these walking corpses, which means that we have to escape into the forest area. Otherwise, they will catch up with us sooner or later. Is that so? Yes. The temple attendant nodded heavily and explained, these walking corpses have no vision and their movements are very fast. The only way to get rid of them is to escape into a place with complicated terrain. After all, these things don't know how to take a detour or restrain their strength. Just a few turns will make them dizzy from bumping into trees. At that time, it will be very easy to escape. In other words, these things are forcing me to go to the Hungry Ghost Forest. In any case, Lin Yuan was also an existence that came out of the Hingduan Mountains. His original foothold was the monster forest outside the Hingduan Mountains. Lin Yuan was no stranger to the forest near Mountain Bar City. Although he had never been to the Hungry Ghost Forest and did not see the relevant map, he quickly guessed the location of the Hungry Ghost Forest. That was the place where a large number of Shenlin Jun's reserve troops were killed. Now, these Shenlin Jun's reserve troops seemed to have been awakened by the evil god and became the undead that were even more terrifying than the walking corpses. However, crossing the Hungry Ghost Forest was originally Lin Yuan's plan from the beginning. First, that area was close to the Hingduan Mountains. He also wanted to see the current situation of the Hingduan Mountains. If the Hungry Ghost Forest really did not work, he could only choose to enter the Hingduan Mountains and take a detour. From the beginning, Lin Yuan did not consider the Earth Plain. To put it bluntly, without a certain level of strength, even cultivators would not be able to escape from that place. What was the difference between bringing a large number of ordinary people into the Earth Plain and sending those undead outside? The monsters in that place were all things that suddenly drilled out from the ground. They were not something that cultivators could take care of. In their team, they did not have such extravagant manpower that they could use. Chapter 884. Let's head north and see if we can walk through the Hingduan mountain range. If we really can't, then we'll force our way through the Hungry Ghost Forest. Tell everyone to be careful. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and tightly wrapped her arms around the temple attendant's arm. Her mood was a little complicated. Just as the temple attendant said, although the gathering of undyings was troublesome and large in number, they were only the lowest level of walking corpses. After leaving the protection area of the Blackwater Dragon King Temple, they could casually see a large number of walking corpses. The survivors who made a living in this area were already used to it. As long as they weren't entangled by these low-level undyings, escaping wasn't much of a problem. Moreover, there were many Heaven Dipper realm cultivators in the surroundings who would occasionally send some walking corpses flying, relieving the pressure on the entire group. However, Lord Dragon King, those hungry ghosts are still a little troublesome. The temple attendant sighed softly and slowly said, although the hungry ghosts aren't the main force of the Undyings, they already have considerable intelligence. They often hide by the roadside or in the woods and emit the cries of women or children to lure the cultivators passing by. Many people have fallen for it. Moreover, the hungry ghosts never devour prey in their hunting areas. Once they catch prey, they will drag it back to their nest and trap it there. They will slowly enjoy it after a day of hunting. Therefore, it's very difficult to find traces of the hungry ghosts just by looking at the environment. If it wasn't for the fact that too many people went missing in the hungry ghost forest when the northern frontier just turned into the underworld and the northern frontier king specially organized an investigation team, the existence of the hungry ghost forest would probably still be unknown. At this point, Miao Zhu touched his right cheek. There was a claw mark that almost caused half of his face to curl up. It was obvious that this claw mark came from some kind of beast. Miao Zhu was quite tenacious. Even with half of his face cut open, he didn't die. Touching the claw marks on his face, the temple attendant said faintly, "Previously, I encountered a few hungry ghosts. In a moment of kindness, I almost lost my life. These fellows rarely move alone. Even the smallest group usually has 3 to 5 hungry ghosts. Their usual movements are no different from ordinary humans, even slightly stiff. However, once they enter battle mode, their pouncing speed is not inferior to those high-level Wisdom Realm demonic beasts. Coupled with their undying characteristics, even Heaven Dipper Realm cultivators would find it hard to survive if they were to tangle with them. The difference between each level of the Undying could be said to be like heaven and earth. The hungry ghosts weren't existences that could be shaken off just by relying on the terrain. This was also the reason why the hungry ghost forest was comparable to a danger zone. These kinds of fast and undying things could tear a team like theirs apart in the blink of an eye if there were tens of thousands of them. Lin Yuan closed his eyes tightly and felt a sense of helplessness in his heart. Unless he used a large amount of Joss flames to raise the cultivation of this clone to the same level as his main body, he could only use the power of the underworld realm's black water. Although using this kind of power at this juncture could effectively fight against those undying, it would also accelerate the process of the northern frontier's underworld realm transformation. Every bit of underworld qi that contaminated the land now would take a longer time to cleanse it with spirit qi in the future. Lord Dragon King, I've confirmed that the Hingduan mountain range is also very chaotic now. Those who are loyal to the Beast Lord Kirin and those who want to take the opportunity to take the throne are fighting fiercely. There are also some neutral parties who are fighting fiercely with the Inferno Demon Beasts and the Undying, but most of the situations are not good. It's fine if our caravan takes some safer routes. After all, those demon beasts are fighting fiercely now and can't take care of the supplies of our caravan. But if you enter the Hingduan mountain range... Li Zhong let go of a demon bird that was delivering a letter. He looked at Lin Yuan with a complicated expression, his face full of hesitation. Lin Yuan was silent. He had almost forgotten that the position of the Beast Lord of the Hingduan mountain range had almost been taken away by Incubus. All the tribes had been in the stage of fighting openly and secretly, all wanting to sit on the position of the Beast Lord of the Hingduan mountain range. Lin Yuan himself was also in existence that Incubus thought highly of. He also expanded the northern frontier for the Hingduan mountain range, established the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, and brought a lot of benefits and convenience to the demon beasts in the Hingduan mountain range. The 3 beast lords also had a good impression of Lin Yuan. Some tribes that had no hope of competing for the beast lord's position also thought highly of Lin Yuan. He was a strong competitor for the Beast Lord's position. Now that the Hingduan mountain range was in a mess, not to mention whether the evil god was still in the Hingduan mountain range. Even if he was not, those who wanted to compete for the Beast Lord's position would not watch Lin Yuan do whatever he wanted. Even if they could not capture or kill Lin Yuan, they would most likely chase Lin Yuan away. Damn it, cerebral palsy. Lin Yuan cursed in a low voice. Although he did not know why the demon beasts in the Hingduan mountain range had betrayed Incubus before, now that the Undying and the Purgatory demon beasts were on the rise, he did not believe that the various tribes in the Hingduan mountain range would have an easy time. At this time, they did not unite to deal with the Undying and the Purgatory demon beasts, and even wanted to take advantage of the absence of Incubus to conquer the Hingduan mountain range. If this behavior was not cerebral palsy, what was it? After thinking for a moment, Lin Yuan glanced at the team that was approaching the forest, and then turned his head to look at the undead that was chasing behind. Then he sighed faintly and asked, "I don't know the specific combat power of the Hungry Ghost Forest. You have been in the northern frontier all this time. Roughly estimate, with our current strength, what is the probability of breaking through the Hungry Ghost Forest?" Li Zhong was silent for a moment, and then said with a bitter face, "If there is no external help, the pattern of us passing through the Hungry Ghost Forest is almost zero. I estimate that we will not be able to go far before most of the ordinary people in the team will die, followed by the low-level cultivators. If we go deep into the Hungry Ghost Forest, I can't guarantee what kind of monsters we will encounter, and we may not even be able to get out." Speaking of this, Li Zhong lowered his head in shame, and said with a mosquito-like voice, "When the Hungry Ghost Forest was first discovered, it attracted our high attention. Senior Wine Sword Mystery organized a large number of experts of the Association of the Demon Emperor to go to the Hungry Ghost Forest, but less than 20% of them came out, including Senior Wine Sword Mystery. Their whereabouts are currently unknown." As the capital of Lin Yuan's fortune, although the Association of the Demon Emperor was divided into different organizations, and its power was weakened again and again, its comprehensive strength was always the strongest force in the northern frontier. Putting aside those mercenaries who worked for the bounty, the strength of the Association of the Demon Emperor was absolutely enough to crush Wine Sword Mystery, who was in the same realm. With the resources of the northern frontier, it was estimated that it would not take long for Wine Sword Mystery to break through to the Kongming realm and become one of the guardians of the northern frontier. But now, Wine Sword Mystery was most likely dead. Chapter 885. Under the command of Li Zhong, the whole team walked into the forest of hungry ghosts in an orderly manner. The temple attendant who was responsible for protecting Lin Yuan was at the back of the team, in charge of blocking the zombies that were chasing after them. Although the Eye of God was still unable to be used, Lin Yuan could see the grey death chi in the forest as soon as he opened his eyes. Ta! 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 The sound of footsteps and the sound of branches breaking could be heard one after another. Even without using their eyes, they knew that a large number of things were approaching their team from the forest of hungry ghosts. The zombies that had been chasing after them also stopped at this moment. They used their inferior intelligence to show the instincts of a weak creature when encountering a strong predator. They almost did not hesitate to give up on the living humans that they loathed, turned around and rushed in the same direction. Their speed was even faster than when they were chasing Lin Yuan and the others by more than 3 times. Hungry ghosts. Lin Yuan looked at the monsters in the surrounding forest and on the branches of the trees and softly muttered. Compared to the hungry ghosts in the midst of his previous life who had small mouths, thin throats, big stomachs and could not eat anything, the hungry ghosts in the Tianwu world did look better, but it was not much better. Their pale and bloodless skin looked strange as if it was covered with a thick layer of powder. Their scarlet eyes were no different from the eyes of a normal person, but the blood vessels in the whites of their eyes were all prominent. They seemed to be enduring great pain all the time. Saliva dripped from the corner of their mouth from time to time. At the same time, when they opened their mouth, 2 rows of crisscrossed sharp teeth like shark teeth could be seen. Whoosh! A sharp sound broke through the air. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He almost subconsciously tightened his grip on the temple attendant's hand, and used all his strength to fling it upwards. However, with the current basic attributes of his external incarnation, it was completely unable to move a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator. The basic strength of both sides was not at the same level. However, the temple attendant's reaction was very fast. The moment Lin Yuan moved, he had already flung his arm according to Lin Yuan's rhythm. A ray of cold light suddenly appeared. The temple attendant's flinging arm almost brushed against the cold light. Crack! A huge tree that required 5 adults to wrap their arms around made a loud noise and fell towards the ground. What is this? The temple attendant lost his voice and his face was filled with fear. Being able to slice through the tree might seem frightening, but to be honest, it might not be able to pierce through a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator's protective aura and injure the cultivator himself. However, the speed of the attack was incomparably fast. If it wasn't for Lin Yuan's terrifying sense of danger, this attack would have taken his life. From the very beginning, it had been targeting Lin Yuan. As the tree fell to the ground, the dust, wood shavings, and gravel that were sent flying into the air fell to the ground. The cold gleam was revealed. A 3-foot-3 green long sword was nailed to the back of the tree stump. The hilt of the sword was still trembling slightly, as if it had not reached the tree stump, but had been forcefully stopped. A translucent figure slowly condensed beside the long sword, gradually showing the appearance of Wine Sword Mystery. As the figure continued to condense, the skin was turning scarlet. The pair of eyes that could no longer be distinguished from the pupils and the whites of the eyes were all ferocious, like an angry hedgehog. Just by looking at it from afar, one would be intimidated. Incarnation of Azura, Lin Yuan murmured softly, and his eyes began to become dignified. When Buddhism talked about the 6 paths of reincarnation, there were 3 good paths and 3 evil paths. The path of heaven, the path of humanity and the path of Azura were the 3 good paths. However, the path of Azura was actually not the true good path. It was just that those who could fall into the path of Azura were much more fortunate than those who fell into the 3 evil paths. Those who fell into the path of Azura were all people who harbored resentment in their hearts and loved to fight. Basically, they were all fierce generals and valiant heroes. The moment they entered the path of Azura, they would become Azura. From then on, they would fight to the death day and night without any other desires. They did not even need to rest. The entire path of Azura was filled with battle maniacs. They would constantly reincarnate and kill. Every time they killed, every time they reincarnated, it would make the Azura stronger and more terrifying. Right now, the path of reincarnation in the Sky Martial world was incomparably crude. After the northern frontier gradually turned into the underworld, it gradually began to be perfected. The Wine Sword Mystery in front of him who died in the forest of hungry ghosts and turned into Azura was probably the first Azura in the world. Everything in the world could not escape from a beginning and an end. In the rules, 1 was a very unique number. It often represented a special meaning. Most of the time, as long as any creature had a title related to 1, it often represented that they were unrivaled in their race and could look down on the world with disdain. For example, the primordial chaos creatures, those who could become famous almost all had the benefits of 1. For example, Red Cloud Daoist was the first Red Cloud in the Eldritch world to attain Dao. Also, in the 3 races that were once incomparably powerful, the Ancestral Dragon, the Original Phoenix and the First Kirin, these 3 were also existences that could directly crush all the other races. This also reflected the fact that the Wine Sword Mystery was not an easy person to deal with. Being targeted by such an existence, even if Lin Yuan was already mentally prepared, he still felt a chill in his heart. After all, Azuras were things that could not be killed. Even if you crushed them into pieces, they would be reborn in a short period of time. Then, with a roar that was mixed with excitement and anger, they would once again pounce towards their opponent. Not to mention, before this, Wine Sword Mystery had already suppressed the peak of the Heaven Dipper realm and killed him with 5 swords. After transforming into an Azura, he would only be stronger. Furthermore, he would be able to continuously absorb nutrients from the endless battles, making himself stronger and stronger. Dragon King, you go first. I will deal with him. Li Zhong's body flashed and stood between the Wine Sword Mystery and the temple attendant. He narrowed his eyes and said. After all, he was the human king of the northern frontier. Even if he was a puppet supported by Lin Yuan, he was still cautious and conscientious in governing the northern frontier. During this period of time, he had accumulated some king's qi, which was just enough to suppress the fierce generals who had transformed into Azuras. Even if it was other existences who had transformed into Azuras, they would also be suppressed to a certain extent. We can't get out by ourselves. At this juncture, even if Lin Yuan was reluctant to give up these walking incense power, he had to recognize the reality. When he came to the northern frontier, he was afraid that he had already fallen into the perception of the evil god. Whether it was the walking dead coming from all directions or the change of the situation in the Hingguan Mountains, they were all for Lin Yuan to fill in his standard answer for a multiple-choice question. Even, Lin Yuan's use of this incarnation might have the interference of the evil god. Chapter 886. Even a true god couldn't do it as he wished, let alone Lin Yuan, who relied on the power of the system and barely used the power of incense. Before he returned to the northern region, he didn't even think that he would be using that avatar. He also didn't expect that things would turn out this way. This time, he had truly stepped into the other party's trap. Under the other party's interference, he arrived at the Blackwater Dragon King Temple near Mountain Blocking City. Before he sensed the crisis, he didn't choose to decisively give up the ordinary survivors. Instead, he tried to bring most of them to a safe place alive. So, he bumped into the gift that the other party prepared for him in the Hungry Ghost Forest. I was careless. Lin Yuan whispered softly. The reason why he ended up in this situation was because he underestimated the enemy too much. After all, the Transcendent Realm humans and the Ancestor Demon Realm beasts were all under his control in the Endless Sea. Although he knew that his identity was special at that time, and there was a mysterious organization that intimidated the indigenous creatures in the Tianwu world, Lin Yuan still couldn't help but despise the existence of this realm. Even if it was a trivial thought, it was enough to push him into the abyss at the critical moment. Master Dragon King, leave quickly. Li Zhong gently waved his hand. His eyes stared at the Wine Sword Mystic and said in a deep voice, even if I die, I will. Before he finished his words, he was interrupted by Lin Yuan's cold snort. Actually, you don't have the talent to be an actor. I just didn't think of it before, but now. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured, actually, from the moment you appeared in front of me, you have already revealed your flaws. Logically speaking, without my order and without special circumstances, you are not allowed to leave Shunning City. Now, the pressure on the Wei River battlefield has been greatly reduced, and the Sky Demon is slowly retreating. Although you said that there is no need to guard the front line, no matter from which perspective, you shouldn't appear in front of me so quickly. Speaking of this, Lin Yuan paused and ridiculed, isn't that right, Brother Lei? Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Li Zhong was first taken aback by Lin Yuan's words and then he began to laugh maniacally. Amidst his laughter, his body began to twist and contort, gradually transforming into Lei Fan's appearance. He was similarly delicate and handsome, different from the boorish northern frontier people. Both Li Zhong and Lei Fan were from the Central Plains, near the south. Both of them exuded a unique aura, less ferocious and more gloomy. Lei Fan turned around slowly with a smile on his face. His eyes narrowed slightly as he said, it's been a long time, Black Snake. No, I mean Lord Dragon King. The gift that I have prepared for you, is it to your liking? When his voice fell, the smile on Lei Fan's face had already disappeared. He looked coldly at Lin Yuan, with neither sorrow nor joy on his face. One could not tell that he hated Lin Yuan for stripping him of his position as the king of the northern frontier back then, nor could one see the slightest joy from dragging Lin Yuan into a dead end. The Tao of Azura and the Tao of Hungry Ghost. 2 of the 6 Tao have appeared. Although I do not like the methods of Buddhism, I have to say, you, or the one behind you, are indeed quite capable. Lin Yuan also had the same emotionless look on his face as he said indifferently, if it wants to establish the netherworld before me and become the netherworld king of this world, then I would be more than happy to oblige. Not only would I not interfere, I would even lend it a helping hand. But the problem is, the 2 of you do not want to go anywhere but instead, you want to bring disaster to the northern frontier. If that is the case, then I will have to talk to the 2 of you. As if Lin Yuan had said a joke, the corners of Lin Yuan's mouth opened again and he said with a smile, "With just you?" Although I do not like that fellow as well, but I have to say that his calculations are on point. Lord Dragon King, you are now in a dead end. Save your own life first before you come and fight with us. After saying that, he waved his hand at Lin Yuan and the smile on his face did not change. Goodbye, if we can meet again. As his voice fell, Lei Fan's figure gradually melted into the death aura, until he completely disappeared. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and his gaze swept across the group of survivors whose faces were gradually filled with fear and he said loudly, "The 2 of you, if you do not make a move now, then this trip will be in vain." At the same time his voice fell, a pool of blood exploded. A hungry ghost that was pouncing towards the temple attendant was pinched in mid-air by a formless force and was then crushed into pieces. When it fell to the ground, it had already become a mass of flesh and blood that was wriggling non-stop, as if it was struggling to heal itself. But that formless force was filled with ruthlessness as it continued to crush the mass of flesh and blood on the ground, until the mass of flesh had been crushed into meat paste before it stopped. The surrounding ground looked as if it had been trampled by thousands upon thousands of mammoths, filled with cracks. The area where the mass of flesh and blood had been smashed into a large crater close to 100 meters deep. Too bloody, bloody, bloody. Lin Yuan cursed in his heart. Even with his current mental fortitude, he couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. After a while, a blood-red palanquin came flying through the air. Sitting on the shaft of the palanquin was a handsome youth. But he had a pair of inverted triangular eyes, which not only ruined his beauty, but also added a sense of ruthlessness. He didn't look like a good person. He was dressed in a blood-red robe, and his taste was comparable to that of Red Cloud Taoist. But Red Cloud was originally Red Cloud, and the robe he wore was also transformed by his transcendence energy, so the color was not really chosen. But for normal people, other than for marriage, rarely would they dress so brightly. Especially in this feudal era where there were cultivators, although there were many styles of clothing, but most of them were black, white and gray. The fancier ones were just embellished with decorative patterns, or choose green or blue fabrics. The Church of the Divine Blood actually failed to kill someone. What a bunch of trash. The red-robed youth glanced in the direction where Lei Fan had disappeared, and his eyes flashed with dissatisfaction. As for who he was targeting, it was obvious. This was the patriarch of the Church of the Divine Blood lamenting that his disciples and grand-disciples had failed to live up to his expectations. Although the Church of the Divine Blood had been completely wiped out by the Northern Battlefront Army, and now young Qinglin was all alone. Shenlin Jun, defend against the enemy. Following closely behind, Lei Chuxing's voice rang out. Teams of red-feathered and white-caped soldiers from the Jin family chopped down the hungry ghosts that were pouncing towards them, and the team behind each of them carried 7 short spears. After the comrades in the front chopped down the hungry ghosts, they followed behind expressionlessly, and nailed the hungry ghosts on the ground with their spears, restraining their spasming and healing bodies. They had good teamwork, and were very skilled in dealing with the undying. The survivors couldn't compare to them, and they didn't even frown when they saw a bloody scene. The division of labor was clear, and everyone was focused on their own mission. Chapter 887. Before going to the battlefield, most of the soldiers were thinking about making a name for themselves in order to obtain the title of a noble or a general. However, after going to the battlefield, there were not many people who could still maintain this kind of thinking. Most people were thinking about how to survive. To put it bluntly, the ancient battlefield was like a meat grinder. Every soldier fought face to face. Unless they were really brave to a certain extent, after a few battles, even if they did not die, they would become disabled. Otherwise, they would be like the famous generals that Lin Yuan had seen in his previous life. All of them had hidden injuries and old illnesses. Even if they did not die on the battlefield, they would not end up dying of old age. If one wanted to survive on the battlefield with cold weapons, it was a skill. Even if one pretended to be dead, one had to choose a place where there were not many corpses and no one would pass by. After the war, when the victors cleaned up the battlefield, they had to find a way to slip away so that they would not be killed or captured and punished according to military law. Therefore, the more inconspicuous a person was, the easier it was to survive. Golden armor, red plume, and a white cloak. This kind of outfit was a little too conspicuous on the battlefield. It was estimated that it would not be long before the fierce people of the enemy came over with their weapons. Otherwise, when the enemy's long-range troops attacked, they would focus on taking care of the conspicuous targets. Therefore, if one did not die early on the battlefield dressed in gaudy clothes, then he or she was a fierce person. In history, how many of those fierce generals who were known as the enemies of 10,000 people actually wore standard equipment? Other than them, there were definitely people who did not wear standard equipment. As for why they did not leave their names, was that still a problem? The gaudy equipment also proved that the members of Shenlin Jun were really fierce. After fighting in all kinds of wars, big and small, those who were dressed in gaudy clothes and had not been hacked to death. Even if they did not talk about their cultivation, in the history of Lin Yuan's previous life, they were basically fierce generals who could fight against 10,000 people. However, in Shenlin Jun's army, they were only at the level of a small soldier. As the most elite army of Shenwu dynasty, no matter if it was the Northern Army or the Southern Expedition, they would not be a match for Shenlin Jun's army even if they fought together. It was no doubt normal that the various revolutionary armies in the south were destroyed by such an army. If it was not because of the chaos caused by the Sky Demon, Shenlin Jun would not have been able to defend the northern frontier even if he had the help of the Shuangjin dynasty. It was estimated that only the Blackwater Army and the Falling Star Army could compete with them. However, the former needed time to grow. After all, although the Blackwater Army had the advantage of being blessed by the heavens and the northern frontier's martial arts and resources, they had not been an army for long. For example, Zhao Guangchong, Qin Yu, and Bao Yuan had reached the Heaven Gang realm. However, almost everyone in Shenlin Jun's army was at the Heaven Gang realm. Although the latter's quality was about the same and they had been fighting for a long time, there were still too few of them. From this, it could be seen that although Lei Qiuxing spent most of his taxes on Shenlin Jun every year, it was not without reason that the Shenwu dynasty could steal the country and establish itself as one of the 7 dynasties. Lei Qiuxing, who was also wearing a golden armor, stood at the back of Shenlin Jun. The only difference was that the white cloak on his back was drawn with patterns of human faces and beast heads with golden threads. Basically, military experts had a hobby of collecting. Some fierce people had a lot of military flags placed in their military meeting room. These flags were obtained after defeating other famous generals and were used to show off their military achievements. It could be considered the romance of soldiers and was also the favorite way for soldiers to show off in this era. Of course, not everyone's military flag was qualified to be collected. Those unknown Tom, Dick, and Harry did not have the qualifications to be collected by Lei Chou-sheng, who had the label of military god plastered on his forehead. In the eyes of Lei Chou-sheng, this kind of flag would most likely be chopped down to avoid being an eyesore. Lei Chou-sheng's cloak was something similar. The human faces embroidered on it were the faces of generals and demonic beasts that he had defeated one by one. A single cloak could be embroidered with 15 to 40 patterns. Before Lei Chou-sheng left the imperial capital, there were nearly 1,000 similar cloaks. One could imagine how glorious this man's military achievements were. His Majesty really gave me a surprise. Lin Yuan glanced at Lei Chou-sheng and the corner of his mouth slightly twitched. When a man was about to die, his words were kind. The words that Lei Chou-sheng said before his death did not seem to be entirely to sow discord between Lin Yuan and Lei Chou-sheng. He had such an army in his hands, yet he did not take it out even when he had almost died. When the Sky Demon attacked the northern frontier, he did not take it out either. He only said that he would deliver this fatal blow at the right time. Now that Shen Lin Jun had appeared here at this time, it was indeed very fatal. At least, it was so for Lin Yuan. He did not think that he could only escape from Shen Lin Jun's pursuit. Lei Chou-sheng did not seem to understand the coldness in Lin Yuan's words. He smiled and said, "Soldiers are double-edged swords. They can kill the enemy and also protect the country. Using these little bastards to fight the Sky Demon head-on is like using an egg to crack a rock. But if you let them hide, at the crucial moment, didn't they save your life? Even if the method is a bit dirty, it is still a life-saving grace." When Shen Lin Jun was hiding in the northern frontier, Lin Yuan had never seen the reports of the major intelligence agencies. Whether they had hidden in the northern frontier before the northern frontier became chaotic or after the northern frontier was transformed into the underworld, it could not be denied that this army was a ticking time bomb in Lin Yuan's eyes. He did not know when they would swing their blades and aim at the vital points of the northern frontier. Especially at this critical moment, it was said that the battle in the front line was very tragic. Almost half of the Blackwater army was lost, and the Falling Star army was almost wiped out. Not to mention the cannon fodder Southern expedition. The Northern Army was also on the verge of collapse under the scourge of the Northern Restoration Society and the Immortal. The military power of the northern frontier was declining rapidly. It was hard to control the existence of Shen Lin Jun. A man with a strong desire for power, who was in charge of the most powerful army in the whole territory, Lin Yuan never knew what was called luck. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, the reason why he could survive was that he was used to having the most malicious speculations about others. Although it was tiring to live, it was proven that this habit had saved him from death more than once in his previous life. "Let's go." Lei Chou-sheng glanced at Lin Yuan and said with a fake smile, "The Shenwu dynasty is not officially destroyed yet. The northern frontier is still my territory. No matter what has turned the northern frontier into this, if it is not stopped, it will not be just the northern frontier that will become like this, right? Your Blackwater Dragon King Temple can resist the enemy, which means you can find the enemy and kill it. Based on this, I will not do anything to you." Lei Chou-sheng pointed at his head and added, "I'm not so muddle-headed that I can't think straight." Chapter 888. Wine Sword Mysterious, who had turned into Shura, opened his mouth, but no one could hear what he said clearly. They saw a flash of red light, and Wine Sword Mysterious had already rushed to the temple attendant with his sword. The sword was pointed at Lin Yuan. There was no emotion in his eyes that were full of hostility. The only emotion that could be read was the desire for battle and blood. Obviously, he had completely forgotten Lin Yuan. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. The sword in Wine Sword Mysterious hand was raised high by the shock, but a cyan black machete was only slightly deviated. With the slight adjustment of the wrist of the attacker, the machete returned to the original track and still slashed at Wine's sword mysterious chest. Chee! The machete tore open Wine's sword mysterious gradually solidified chest, and a large amount of black blood gushed out. However, in just a moment, the powerful recovery ability of the immortal and Shura began to work. The wound torn by the machete slowly grew granulation. The granulation squirmed and entangled together, and the torn wound was almost healed in an instant. Tisk, young Qinglin curled his lips, shook off the black blood on the machete, and said expressionlessly, "Undying monster, the healing speed is better than the ordinary immortal. Except that I can't see his wisdom for the time being, he is much stronger than the garbage around. He deserves to be the strongest sword practitioner of the royal family of 10,000 swords in the past. He is really tricky. His wisdom is not high, at least for the time being." In the face of an invincible opponent, he chose to launch a sneak attack. After failing, he quickly realized that it was difficult for him to get away, so he turned to rely on his immortal characteristic to prepare for battle. His attack was aimed at me. It was not aimed at me, but he subconsciously judged that I was the weakest among the opponents around him. He killed the weak and then turned to deal with the strong. Although this tactic does not work most of the time, it can prove that this guy's wisdom has reached the level of the top predator of beasts. There was no change on Lin Yuan's head of the flood dragon, as if it was not him who was targeted by Wine's sword mysterious just now. The level of the top predator of beasts, Lei Chuxing narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, in other words, it has the level of an 8 to 10-year-old human child. While it is crazy, it still has a trace of rationality. Then, this kind of guy, is there a possibility that it can be domesticated? Shuras can't be tamed. The existence of this race only pursues to kill powerful opponents, or be killed by powerful opponents, and then constantly recovers and regenerates. Through one death battle after another, they quickly become stronger. Not to mention that their intelligence is not high now. Even if they have the intelligence of an adult, they are 100% arrogant and unruly. With such a guy by your side, you may not be able to order him around. Who knows, he might even become a knife hanging over your head. Lin Yuan squinted his eyes and looked at Zhou Jianxian, who had a violent look in his eyes. He opened his mouth and interrupted Lei Chuxing's delusional thoughts. Innate Shuras would not obey anyone except the existence that created them, such as ancestor Mingi who created the Azura tribe, or the evil god who prompted Zhou Jianxian to transform into Shuras. However, it was hard to say. After all, after the death of the warlike and war devourer, there was a high probability that they would transform into Shuras and enter the path of Shuras. Lin Yuan did not know Zhou Jianxian, so he was not sure whether he transformed into Shuras himself after he died in the forest of hungry ghosts, or whether he was used by the evil god as the key to open the path of Shuras and transformed into this with a secret skill. If he transformed himself, there was a possibility of subduing him. Although he still changed his nature as a vicious wolf, as long as he could always maintain a stronger posture than him, he could only be a domestic dog with his tail between his legs in front of his master. But if it was the latter, Lin Yuan, who had half a foot in the realm of the underworld god, knew very well that once the immortal was formed, it would be a tragedy. It would be neither alive nor dead and would never enter the cycle of reincarnation. It would either wander in the human world or the underworld forever, or it would be destroyed in body and soul by the things that targeted the immortal. Unless the underworld was established in this world, and there were positions such as the 10 kings of hell, judges, impermanence, and so on, the immortal would never be able to cultivate to a positive result. When the group of people was confronting Zhou Jianxian, the weather suddenly changed. Although the gray death aura was still there, the sky suddenly became better. The warm sunlight shone through the gaps in the forest of hungry ghosts, making the hungry ghosts who were eyeing them covetously let out unpleasant strange cries. I can't be so unlucky, Lin Yuan's eyes flickered, and he whispered. Although he was not an immortal, he was still a quasi-underworld king. He could not understand the meaning of the strange cries of the hungry ghosts, but he could clearly feel the emotions in the cries of the hungry ghosts. That was fear. It wasn't because they were afraid of the sunlight. According to the information recorded in the scripture of all beings, the undying didn't fear sunlight no matter which world they were in. They preferred to appear at night simply because the majority of the undying cultivated by absorbing the essence of the moon. Just like how cultivators preferred to go to places with dense spirit energy, the undying didn't like to appear during the day because they couldn't absorb the essence of the moon during the day. Without replenishment, they would only grow weaker and weaker. Ultraviolet light could illuminate the undying. However, there were also immortal that could absorb sunlight to cultivate. It was just a difference in the amount. For example, among the immortal that could still be active under the sun, for example, after the Walking Dead evolved into zombies, if they existed for a long time, they would become flying zombies, which were not rare in myths. They were also called flying yikshaws. Zombies of this level could absorb sunlight to strengthen themselves. Moreover, flying yikshaws were also a powerful troop class in the underworld in Lin Yuan's previous life. But flying zombies were not enough to cause a change in the sky. There were many immortal that could cause a change in the sky, but the most famous one was Drought Demon. During the war between the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu had invited the help of the Wind Master and the Rain Master to set up the desolate wind and bitter rain formation. Even Yinglong, the valiant general under the Yellow Emperor, suffered a great loss. One must know that Yinglong was a superior species in the dragon race, but he was suppressed in the method of summoning clouds and rain. One could imagine how critical the Yellow Emperor's situation was at that time. Without any other choice, the Yellow Emperor killed his daughter named Ba, and used a secret method to refine her into a zombie. With a large amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, he refined her into the world's first zombie, which was also the highest level of existence among zombies. After Ba became a zombie, she gained a powerful ability, which was the legendary "Once Drought Demon was born, the land within 1,000 li of scarlet." This sentence had an exaggerated meaning. With Lin Yuan's current vision, it was not difficult to guess that Drought Demon's true ability was to disperse the clouds. That was why the land within 1,000 li of scarlet was said. Chapter 889. The Drought Demon could disperse the clouds. Every time it appeared, it would be a clear sky. Both the white clouds and the rain clouds would avoid it. As long as the Drought Demon stayed in a place for a day, it would not rain for a day. After all, rain came from the dark clouds. If there were no clouds, how could it rain? According to the records in the myths, after that battle, Yinglong returned to the south, and Hanbo was exiled to the north. He was known as the god of drought. However, the people in the north always used sunbathing, flooding, eating tigers, and other such rituals to expel Hanbo. It was not necessarily disrespectful to the god. It was just that in the ancient times of the previous world, there was no place that could withstand drought. Once there was a great drought, it basically represented the end of a dynasty. In the early days, people still treated Hitorigami as a god. However, after the middle of the Ming dynasty, Hitorigami was seen as a demon. There were even legends of Hitorigami turning into a hoe. Lin Yuan was not sure if it was true, but according to the information in the Book of Life, hoe did exist. Moreover, it was the nemesis of dragons. In the same realm, it was said that a hoe could fight 3 dragons and 2 flood dragons. Run! Lin Yuan cleared up the distracting thoughts in his mind and looked at the gradually receding clouds, which were getting bigger and bigger, and suddenly growled. Hitorigami, as the ancestor of zombies in the orthodox legends, was definitely not as common as it was in the novels of his previous life. Moreover, the northern frontier had not completely turned into the underworld. It was already extremely difficult to breed creatures like hungry ghosts and asuras. Most places should be overrun with zombies, but there was one thing that was absolutely impossible. This level of underworld could not breed a demon like Hitorigami. This guy was the foreign evil god. This was 2F** King Fun. Lin Yuan could face the prehistoric creatures with a high attitude because of the existence of karma on him. Those who only wanted to live did not have the guts to anger the heavens. At most, they would fight openly and secretly, forcing Lin Yuan to cooperate with them. They would never dare to take Lin Yuan's life. But what was Hitorigami? It was the ancestor of zombies. Zombies did not exist in the 3 realms, nor in the 5 elements. Mere karma could not bind them. To be honest, even if a demon of the zombies was formed, the heavens might not send down a heavenly tribulation. Even the god of thunder did not have the authority to send down lightning punishment on an existence that he could not control. If that thing wanted the position of Sky Marshal Underworld King, it would have to be favored by the world's will. But that was obviously impossible. Even if the world's will could not deal with it, it would not have any good feelings about it. Hitorigami was just a tool for the world's will to transform the northern frontier. Hitorigami should know this. Therefore, the hatred between the 2 sides would never end until one of them was dead. Unless, Lin Yuan's will, Hitorigami. When Hitorigami was born during the Yellow Emperor's time, it could fight against Fengbua and Yushi. This meant that Hitorigami had at least reached the threshold of a true god. Even in this world with an upper limit, the power it could unleash was definitely at the upper limit. It was not an existence that Lin Yuan could contend against. If he could not escape, Lin Yuan would have to give up on this clone and return his consciousness to his main body. Then, he would have to lower his head to the prehistoric creatures that did not put in any effort and discuss the matter of cooperation again. This could not be helped. If he lost some face, then so be it. It was better than losing his life. Guardians of the Elysium. They might not know how to deal with a demon of Hitorigami's level. Even if they knew, they would not risk their lives for Lin Yuan. In a short period of time, they would not be able to gather 1,000,000 merit points to invite other hosts to descend. The temple attendant, who was connected with Lin Yuan, did not hesitate at all. He turned around and fled in the direction he came from. Those survivors who survived because of Shenlin Jun were not stunned. After all, they could survive in this doomsday place until now. If they could not bear it, they would have been killed by the immortals or had a complete mental breakdown. They did not believe in Shenlin Jun, who suddenly appeared. In contrast, they believed more in Lin Yuan, who could protect some areas in the northern frontier with the Blackwater Dragon King Temple, and the temple attendant who did not give up on them easily and was willing to take the risk to cross the Hungry Ghost Forest with them. So when the temple attendant started to move, the survivors started to move as well, following behind the temple attendant and running madly without stopping. Young Qinglin, who was holding a scimitar and confronting Zhou Jianxian, twitched his eyes slightly. He saw Zhou Jinchuan's figure move, turning around and rushing into the depths of the Hungry Ghost Forest. Almost at the same time, young Qinglin also hid his scimitar in his bloody robe, and rushed in the direction of the temple attendant. As an ancient cultivator, young Qinglin had been recovering his strength in the former territory of the Blood Divine sect. As a lucky withdrawal from the ancient stage where cultivators were killing each other, and came to the new era where at most mortals and low-level cultivators were fighting, he had not been accustomed to a dull life. His sensitivity to danger was far more sensitive than Lei Qiuxing. The intuition of a beast. Lei Qiuxing had a thoughtful look on his face, but his movements were not slow at all. He gently waved his hand and roared, "Everyone, get ready to escape with the survivors. Leave some people behind to stall for time. Everyone else, set off quickly and run until you can't run anymore." Before these people ran far, a scarlet figure rushed over like a ghost. After landing, the blood shadow dissipated, revealing its original appearance. It was also pale and bloodless, and its specific facial features could not be seen clearly. A head of long hair like withered grass covered its entire face. After landing, it had been bending over, walking with only one foot, and dragging the other foot on the ground. Ah! It seemed that after landing, it did not see the people it wanted to see, so it raised its head and made a sharp roar. Its eyes hidden under the messy hair turned, and it saw a group of Shinlin Jun who were nailing the hungry ghosts to the ground. Although it was still walking with only one foot, its figure was as fast as the wind, and it was almost invisible. Every time it appeared, a Shinlin Jun's corpse would fall to the ground. A trace of blood-red mist overflowed from the pores of the corpses and blended into the green robe. The corpses on the ground also became black and shriveled, and the death was extremely miserable. However, the death of their comrades did not seem to affect the remaining Shinlin Jun soldiers at all. They could not see the green robe figure, so they simply ignored it. They mechanically cut down the hungry ghosts that rushed over and nailed them to the ground. That. Black Jiao. Where is that? It seemed that it had not spoken for a long time. The green robe figure appeared again in front of a Shinlin Jun soldier, and its voice was as harsh as a cat's paw scratching on the glass. Chapter 890. The Divine Forest Guard did not seem to be able to hear it at all, but it was still shocked by the ear-piercing sound that was so close that it frowned. Its right hand moved extremely quickly, and in an instant, it pulled out a saber from its waist and stabbed towards the abdomen of the green-clothed figure. The Shinlin Jun warrior not only had a high cultivation, but also was good at using various weapons. With a high cultivation and a strong body, they were far better at using some weapons than those masters who had inherited martial arts but had no chance to cultivate. The knife was very fast and the knife light was very bright, but it was useless. The sharp waist knife stopped abruptly at the moment when it stabbed the lower abdomen of the figure in green. As the Shinlin Jun warrior continued to exert force, there was a burst of zzz sound that made one's teeth ache. Immediately, it broke. The moment the iron piece fell to the ground, the figure in green had already raised his hand and lifted the weak human who attacked him with one hand. He opened his mouth again and said, "Answer me." "I won't die." In just a short while, several Shinlin Jun warriors who were close to this side also picked up their weapons and attacked it. Clang! 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 As the sounds of metal colliding rang out, the weapons broke apart without a doubt, turning into metal shards that fell to the ground. Bah, monster! The Shinlin Jun warrior who was lifted up by the figure in green still looked indifferent. He even struggled to spit and scolded angrily. The strange thing was that the figure in green didn't get angry when it was attacked by so many weapons. It even had the mood to threaten them. However, after hearing the word monster, it let out a mournful cry again. Immediately, its whole body was covered with blood. Its speed became more and more ghostly. The hundreds of Shinlin Jun warriors who were left here to guard the rear were turned into charred corpses on the ground in less than 3 breaths. It killed Tiangang like killing dogs. It was terrifying. On the other side, Lei Chouxing and Yang Qinglin quickly caught up with Miao Zhu. After all, both of them were in the Kongming realm. They were at least several times faster than Miao Zhu, who was in the Tiangang realm. You seem to know these monsters very well. Yang Qinglin's emotionless eyes fell on Lin Yuan, and he opened his mouth to ask. The thing that the wine sword mysterious transformed into should be called Shura, which is a kind of undying. Only those who loved to fight when they were alive would have the chance to become Shura, who was obsessed with fighting after they died. Looking at the way he avoided the thing that came after, it means that he turned into Shura on his own. I'm not sure what the thing that followed me was, but if I'm not mistaken, it should be a monster called Hitorigami. It's also the mastermind behind the Northern Frontier's current state. When I first came back, I wanted to find it, kill it, and restore the northern frontier to its former state. But now, I've given up. If that thing is really a drought demon, with my strength, even if I'm at my peak, and with the help of void realm existences like you, I can only last 3 moves at most. Speaking of this, Lin Yuan grinned, revealing a rather ugly smile. The meaning of these 3 moves is that it only needs 1 move each to kill the 3 of us. In other words, if we join forces to confront it, it is estimated that we can take 1 more breath. Hearing this, young Qinglin and Lei Qiuxing's expressions had subtle changes. Young Qinglin was a cultivator in the ancient times. At that time, the cultivation world and the mortal world had not been completely separated. Although the cultivation of the void realm was not considered a powerhouse, at least it was out of the category of cannon fodder. Lei Qiuxing was a serious new generation cultivator. The void realm was already a high existence. What kind of existence could kill the void realm? Experts like killing dogs, 1 move each. It's the transcendent realm. Young Qinglin's face was ugly as if he had eaten a fly. To be able to make a weather-beaten ancient cultivator show such an ugly expression, one could imagine how complicated Yang Qinglin's psychological activities were at this moment. At least, it's the transcendent realm. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said with a strange look in his eyes, "It's not appropriate to simply describe it in terms of realm. To put it simply, its power is already at the limit of this world. If it's slightly stronger, it will cause the space to vibrate. If it keeps attacking with full force, it will even cause the space in a certain area to collapse, burying all the existences in it. In other words, such a thing can't be killed unless you want to die together with it." Hiss. Lei Qiuxing took a deep breath. Although he didn't know what the transcendent realm was, he understood the words such as space vibrations and space collapses. Lei Qiuxing's voice was even a little distorted. He growled, "Aren't you able to contend with it? Aren't those Blackwater Dragon King temples able to resist the land changes and even make the undead detour? If the opponent's strength is as terrifying as you said, then you... If you don't believe me, you can stay here and fight with it. It can also buy us an extra breath of time to escape." Lin Yuan's face changed, but he just restrained his smile. From the corner of his eyes, a figure wrapped in blood aura had already appeared. It was approaching this fleeing team at a very fast speed. They were being chased by someone, and the opponent's speed was even faster. If it weren't for the fact that the fleeing team was quite long, and the opponent seemed to enjoy this game of cat and mouse, slowly following behind the team and devouring the blood aura of those who couldn't run, they would have been caught up by that guy. After seeing the opponent's appearance and the blood aura wrapped around its body, Lin Yuan was more and more certain that that thing was Hitorigami. At this juncture, it was difficult for Lin Yuan to explain to Lei Qiuxing at length. The Blackwater Dragon King Temple could protect one side entirely because of the incense power accumulated in the temple for so long. It would take some time for the underworld aura to erode the area protected by the incense power. In addition, he was also a half-step king of hell. Those undead were not under his command. Of course, they would avoid places where his aura existed. It was just a coincidence, but this didn't mean that his strength was comparable to Hitorigami's. Almost without hesitation, Lin Yuan loosened his body that was wrapped around the temple attendant's arm. He threw himself directly onto Lei Qiuxing's shoulder, then tightly wrapped around Lei Qiuxing's shoulder. He growled, "That thing is catching up. There's no time to talk nonsense. Run." On the other hand, the temple attendant and the guards created by the system slowed down their footsteps at the same time, ignoring the frantically fleeing team. Their eyes were fixed on the blood-red figure that was constantly approaching, and beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on their foreheads. Lei Qiuxing held back the curse that was about to come out of his mouth, and the speed of running forward with Lin Yuan increased a lot again, but behind him, the momentum of those Heavenly Dipper realm cultivators had completely returned to nothingness. More than 200 Heavenly Dipper Realm cultivators added together could only delay it for 2 breaths of time. Chapter 891. Monster. That's ridiculous. Lei Chuxing's expression began to distort. As a Kongming realm existence, he naturally didn't put more than 200 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators in his eyes. Although he wasn't sure if these 200 people could defeat him, he was certain that if he wanted to leave, these 200 people definitely wouldn't be able to stop him. But the problem was that the monster behind them wasn't even a question of whether they could stop him or not. In 2 breaths of time, he killed more than 200 Heaven Dipper realm cultivators. This battle record was too ridiculous. In comparison, they were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. Shenlin Jun, meet the enemy. Lei Chuxing took a deep breath, waved his hand, and coldly gave the order. He had completely believed Lin Yuan's words, but now that they had encountered such a terrifying thing, Lin Yuan was only running. He knew that he couldn't outrun the other party, but as long as he could continue to run, the outcome of the matter would change. When you're helpless, you have to believe in someone with a mind of their own. This was Lei Chuxing's experience after many years in the army. When he was on the battlefield, he had encountered more than one desperate situation. Defeat, mutiny, hunger, plague. Although it was different from the current situation, the only difference was that once they failed, the result was death. No matter how calm a person was, when they encountered an unexpected situation, they might be out of their wits. When other victims put forward their opinions, don't refute or argue. Just think about whether there was a way to survive. If there was, do as the other party said, and you might be able to survive. From a small soldier to a military god, Lei Chuxing had faced countless difficulties. Those who did nothing and waited for the heavens to pity them or bicker did indeed die. Those who survived were either lucky or found a way to survive and didn't give up on them. But, as long as they ran, would they be able to survive? Lei Chuxing's eyes flashed with a touch of contemplation. He didn't know where the thing called Drought Demon came from, and the Black Jiao didn't have the intention to explain. However, what was certain was that the other party's strength was far above theirs. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was toying with them, it would only take a blink of an eye for them to catch up and kill them. Looking at the entire northern frontier, no one could deny that this force, which was separated from the Xinwu dynasty, was growing at an astonishing speed. Especially now, when the dynasty was unstable, the northern frontier almost unilaterally announced that they were the new 7th dynasty. However, no matter how astonishing their growth was, it was impossible for them to catch up to the foundations of the various empires so quickly. As a result, no one in the northern frontier could contend against Hanba. Existences like the Guardians of the Heaven's Gate might have the ability to contend against Hanba, but it was impossible for them to perish together with Hanba. This situation seemed to be unsolvable. As Lei Chuxing's last trump card, the remaining Shenlin Jun soldiers still showed amazing loyalty at this moment. Almost as soon as Lei Chuxing's voice faded away, Shenlin Jun soldiers had already pulled out their weapons, roaring and facing the monster that they knew was impossible to defeat. Go on, run. Lin Yuan's voice sounded again. He was ready to give up this outer body incarnation and return to the Endless Sea, because things had gone far beyond his initial expectations. The existence of Hanba was not something that he could contend with now. Buzz, a clear sound exploded. The blood-red voice paused slightly after this clear cry, revealing a green-clothed figure. However, the long, weed-like hair was blown up by the strong wind, revealing a pale, yet beautiful face. The only thing that destroyed the beauty was the pair of white, murky eyes without pupils. They were like fish eyes, and when placed on a face that resembled a human's, it emitted a strange aura that made one's heart palpitate. Even though Lin Yuan was already mentally prepared, he still felt a strong impact. Hanba from the Untainted World, female, wearing green clothes, she was most likely the unlucky daughter of the Yellow Emperor, who was killed by her respected father and refined into a zombie. Even though she made great contributions to the Yellow Emperor after her death, she did not receive the treatment that a hero should receive. Instead, she was exiled to the north by the Yellow Emperor and became the god of drought or a walking drought in the eyes of humans. No matter where she went, she would be beaten, scolded, driven away, and even demonized in human history. Now, Hanba had truly become one of the demons. The Untainted World was so vast, there might not be only one Hanba. Lin Yuan once had a similar delusion. However, reality gave him a resounding slap in the face. Just like humans and demonic beasts, even if they were in the same realm, there was an absolute difference in strength and weakness. Among the existences of Hanba, which one would be more difficult to deal with than the daughter of the Yellow Emperor, the world's first zombie? Reinforcements. Demonic beasts. Lei Chuxing looked at the figure standing in the air and swallowed dryly, his face a little pale. It was a huge fish that was close to 1,000 feet long, with fins that looked like wings on its body. No, it could be said that those were wings. Not a demonic beast, but a strange beast. Lin Yuan also stared at the figure that swept out from the Hingduan Mountains. A hint of surprise flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. Although he had long been mentally prepared to see a creature of the Untainted World, Lin Yuan did not expect that the first strange beast he encountered would be a luo fish. It was a strange beast that lived in the source of Mang water. It had the body of a fish and the wings of a bird. Its voice was like a mandarin duck, and it also had the bloodline of the dragon race in its body. Like Hanba, it was an existence that gradually turned into a demon. In the oldest legends, the luo fish was actually an auspicious beast. Wherever they appeared, it meant that there would be a flood, causing people to seek refuge in advance. And as time passed, the luo fish gradually became a disaster beast that would bring floods. In his previous life, there was a saying, a fish that leaps over the dragon gate becomes a dragon, and only a carp can be a dragon. This carp was actually not a carp, but a strange beast like the luo fish that had the bloodline of the dragon race. Just like the interpretation of those fairy tales, the ugly duckling could become a white swan because its parents were white swans. A carp without the bloodline of the dragon race would still be a carp even if it leaped over the dragon gate thousands of times. However, the luo fish in the myths had the bloodline of the dragon race. According to some historical records, the luo fish could transform into a dragon after cultivating for 500 years, although it would only transform into a flood dragon. During the flood control period, Yu the Great had killed the flood dragon that caused the flood. It was most likely a luo fish that had cultivated to a certain level. In any case, during that period, all kinds of strange beasts were either dead or hidden. What's more, when the ancestral dragon was sealed, the first Kirin had no choice but to become an auspicious symbol to save its life. Chapter 892. The dragons of the four seas would not cause floods on the continent. Even the evil dragons would only cause chaos in the coastal areas or sink ships at sea. The dragons led by the ancestral dragon and other experts could only retreat to the four seas. Their descendants would not be so blind as to go against the victors of the previous catastrophes. The luo fish in front of him did not look like it had cultivated for merely 500 years, regardless of its size or realm. Lin Yuan could sense the dragon bloodline in it, but it was not strong. Obviously, this luo fish was also a proud master. Like Kirin, it was unwilling to follow the method of evolution recorded in its bloodline. Instead, it was determined to walk its own path. The only difference was that Kirin might still be hitting a wall, but this luo fish had already succeeded. Apart from the dragon bloodline in its body, this luo fish was definitely an existence that could kill a real dragon. It did not need to evolve into a flood dragon like other members of its race and slowly evolve into a superior species. You want to stop me? Hanba looked at the luo fish that had appeared out of nowhere. Her beautiful face gradually became ferocious. The luo fish also let out a voice that sounded like the chirping of mandarin ducks. If you kill him, you will ruin our plans. Then you have to die too. As if it had spoken more and more, Hanba's voice started to become smoother. There was even some correction in its tone. It was no longer full of resentment and hostility like before. Both the luo fish and Hanba were existences that wanted to do great things. However, the luo fish's great things were related to Lin Yuan by karma. In this battle where they had no choice, they stood on the war chariot of the heavenly axiom to ensure that they would not be punished after the heavenly axiom won. As for whether the victor would be Hongjun, that was not a problem for them to consider. From the moment they tried to escape from the Eldritch world, they could no longer board Hongjun's ship. As for Hanba, karma could not do anything to it. Compared to being a dog of the heavenly Daos, it wanted to replace Lin Yuan's position and become the future Nether King of the Heaven Martial World. She didn't have this opportunity in the past. After all, it wasn't easy to complete a world. There had to be enough accumulation, and there were certain requirements for the number of living beings and the degree of civilization. Now that she finally had the opportunity, the position of the Netherworld King had been decided. How could she accept this? Hitorigami's body was once again enveloped by the blood chi. His stooped figure wrapped in green clothes was slowly concealed. However, the instant the blood chi flourished, Hitorigami's speed suddenly stabilized. He transformed into a blood shadow and swept through the air, directly crashing into Luo Yu, who was cutting in horizontally. Luo Yu did not dodge or evade. Its body gradually suffused an azure glow. When the two balls of light, one red and one blue, collided, Luo Yu spread its wings and flew more than 30 meters high. Hitorigami flew backward and landed on the ground. The blood chi that enveloped his body became slightly thinner. Suppressed. Lei Chuxing's expression lit up as he exclaimed in surprise. Young Qinglin, who had also stopped to watch the battle, shook his head and said in a low voice, "That strange beast suffered a loss." Although Hitorigami was knocked back by the recoil, he was not injured. On the other hand, that strange beast had a 3-meter-long wound on its left side. Although Luo Yu was more than 30 meters above the ground, a cultivator's eyesight was extraordinary. Previously, Lei Chuxing's attention was completely focused on Hitorigami. He did not pay much attention to Luo Yu. Now that young Qinglin reminded him, he quickly found the 3-meter-long wound on Luo Yu's body. If this strange beast is not a match, should we run again? Lei Chuxing's expression changed slightly as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty. He knew very well that he could not outrun Hitorigami. Previously, he had forced himself to run forward completely because he believed in Lin Yuan. But now, this powerful aide had only exchanged one blow with Hitorigami and was wounded. No matter how he looked at it, he did not seem like an existence that could defeat Hitorigami. It hasn't started yet. Lin Yuan wrapped around Lei Chuxing's shoulder, his eyes shining as he looked in the direction of the Wei River. Hitorigami could drive the clouds and the sun, but as a zombie, its strength was still its physique. In a head-on clash with Luo Yu, Hitorigami would definitely not be the one at a disadvantage. However, Luo Yu was different. As one of the strange beasts of the classic of mountains and seas, and a legendary calamity beast that could summon floods, it was a classic sorcerer model. Hitorigami had just made the first move. For Luo Yu, the battle had not yet begun. Rumble, rumble, it was as if a great army was galloping, as if the earth was trembling and the mountains were roaring. The power of nature was about to appear. There was no great army here. Most of the undying around them were walking corpses. Not to mention that they instinctively fled out of fear of Hitorigami and Luo Yu's auras. Even if they surrounded them, they would not be able to escape with the momentum of a great army. However, although the earth was trembling, there were no signs of cracks in the ground. It was clearly not an earthquake. Water. Flood. One of the survivors was curious about the sound behind him and turned around to take a look. He immediately exclaimed out loud and increased his running speed by a few notches. The flood of unknown origin was like a beast that devoured everything. Everything it touched along the way was uprooted and carried in the water as it continued to surge towards them. With just a cursory glance, one could see all kinds of trees, stones, and even the wreckage of buildings. There were even some undying that had been swept into the water and were struggling. These days, natural and man-made disasters were common occurrences. Anyone who had experienced a flood would know that the rolling water was extremely oppressive. If one was unlucky enough to be hit by a wave, even a strong and healthy martial artist could be directly killed. Even if they didn't die, they would still be unconscious and fall into the water. They would either be crushed to death, drowned to death, or washed to an unknown corner. In any case, the probability of survival was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. This was the undying characteristic of the undying. Although their bodies were crushed and poured into their mouths and noses time and time again, they could constantly self-heal and expel the water that had become muddy because of the large amount of soil. But even if they did not die, it did not mean that they had the ability to escape from the surging water. Even the undying that had pushed the northern frontier to the brink of destruction was still ridiculously weak in the face of the power of nature. This water, where did it come from? Lei Qiuxing and Yang Qinglin's faces could not help but twitch. They turned their eyes to Lin Yuan at the same time. They felt that their worldview had been shattered again and again today. Now, even if a few powerhouses from ancient times appeared and revived, it would not make them change their expressions. Compared to Luo Yu and Hitorigami, the revival of powerhouses was indeed not a big deal. After all, they were all ants. Even if they were a little stronger, they were still ants. Wei River. Lin Yuan looked indifferently at the surging water, obviously not surprised at all. Chapter 893. Ding. Congratulations to the host. Observing the ancient mystical beast Luo fish controlling water. Water Monarch Proficiency +1. Ding. Congratulations to the host. Observing the ancient mystical beast Luo fish controlling water. Water Monarch Proficiency +1. Ding. Congratulations to the host. Observing the ancient mystical beast Luo fish controlling water. Water Monarch Proficiency +1. The system notifications kept appearing in his mind. Lin Yuan remained motionless as he stared at the Luo fish controlling the Wei River. He had done something similar before. When he first attacked Wei River City, he used the water dragon formed by the Wei River to break through the impregnable defense of Wei River City. Otherwise, Shenlin Jun would not be so easy to deal with even if he was just a reserve soldier. At least half of the 3,000 old soldiers of the Fallen Star Army would be killed before they could break into Wei River City. Even if they survived, they would be exhausted. At that time, it would be hard to say if they could still cause effective damage. However, this was not Wei River City built on the banks of the Wei River. This was the periphery of Mountain Blocking City, a place close to the Hengduan mountain range. The northern frontier and almost all the territories in the north were separated from the Wei River. In fact, the Luo fish was congenitally at a disadvantage when facing Hanba, because Hanba had the ability to drive the clouds and drive the sun. No matter how strong the Luo fish was, it could not cook without rice. Without the existence of clouds, it could not call for rain. It could only transfer the surrounding water. However, the nearby area was full of mountains, and the nearest water area had to be found in Lin Yuan's nest. Moreover, it was only a big lake, which could be evaporated by Hanba's breath. Since ancient times, there were countless monster kings who were good at controlling water. No matter how fancy their methods were, there were only 3 methods in the end. They could either use the nearby water body to control the water flow, or use the clouds to summon rain and use a rainstorm to obtain sufficient water flow. If they were more ruthless, they would prepare some treasures that could store inanimate objects and store a large amount of water in advance. After all, they would not create water out of nothing. Unless the true god was so extravagant as to exchange the power of incense for water, Lin Yuan's current water control technique had only reached the stage where he could control the nearby water flow. If he were to stand here like the luo fish and absorb the water for his own use, he would not be able to do it even if he sucked it dry. Even if he had the position of the northern frontier god and was the true dragon king of the northern frontier, he could not do it. He could not even luo fish controlling the northern frontier. Hee. Hanba merely laughed coldly in disdain as he watched the rolling water. The blood aura around his body once again scattered. His originally stooped body actually slowly straightened up. His long hair fluttered, once again revealing his beautiful face. Even Lei Qiuxing and Yang Qinglin, who were well aware of Hanba's terror, were slightly startled. Their gazes were fixed on Hanba's face without blinking. After all, she was the daughter of the Yellow Emperor, an existence who had left her name in the legends. Even if she had become a zombie now, she was still a woman who once had the title of Heavenly Maiden. In terms of charm, even Guan Zhaoxin paled in comparison. However, Lei Qiuxing was the emperor of a country after all, and Yang Qinglin was an old monster who had lived for who knows how many years. He had probably seen countless goddesses and saintesses. Even if Hanba was indeed beautiful and moving, it was not enough to make the two of them lose their minds at the same time. Therefore, it could be confirmed that Hanba was using illusions, charms, and other tricks at this moment. Her goal was to make them fix their gazes on her. With a thought, the incense power on Lin Yuan's interface burned wildly, forming a divine barrier around him. He did not open his mouth to remind Lei Qiuxing and Yang Qinglin. After all, even if it was a small trick used by a being of Hanba's level, it could be said to be a supernatural power. Lin Yuan did not think that he could awaken the two of them with just a shout. He even felt somewhat lucky that he did not fall into the enchantment of that beautiful face immediately. Close your eyes. Luo Yu was still floating more than 10 feet in the air. When Hanba gradually straightened her body, he opened his mouth to growl. In an instant, the two men who had fallen into Hanba's charms were awakened. The oppression of a superior to a low-level cultivator also forced them to close their eyes involuntarily. In the next moment, a burst of strong light suddenly erupted from Hanba's body. Even though Lin Yuan had set up a divine barrier in advance, he was almost blinded by the light. "Tsk, I was too careless." Lin Yuan suddenly cursed under his breath. It was as if he had no eyes to begin with, his vision depended entirely on his senses and smell. Even the images he saw were images that had been processed by the eye of God. Pure strong light would not blind him. Because he was blind to begin with, but before Lin Yuan could regret wasting the power of incense, he suddenly saw that the power of incense on his panel had been stirred up again. It slid down nearly 200 points before it stopped. When he turned his head, he saw that Lei Qiuxing's face was flushed red. Some of his exposed skin still had traces of burns and blisters. His power of incense did not continue to decrease because after being burned, Lei Qiuxing had actively activated the Gang Qi in his body to resist the rising temperature around him. However, this was a temporary measure. Hanba's body erupted with intense light and heat. This was her natal supernatural power. It was given to her by the Yellow Emperor after he had cruelly killed his daughter to deal with the array of bleak wind and bitter rain. Ordinary cultivators could not withstand this thing. Even if they could, would they be able to fight Hanba in a battle of attrition? Fortunately, the water summoned by Luo Yu had arrived at this time. It coiled around Hanbo like water dragons, causing the surrounding temperature to drop gradually. After all, at this time, Hanbo was fully focused on dealing with Luo Yu's tricks. She had no time to deal with these small fries. However, these water dragons seemed to be able to temporarily trap Hanbo. In front of her powerful supernatural power, even the Count of Wind and Lord of Rain of the past would be defeated if they worked together, let alone the water stream summoned by Luo Yu. You dare to stop me with these tricks? Hanbo's voice rang out from the area surrounded by water dragons. Her tone was filled with insufferably arrogance, as if this Luo Yu was just a chicken or a pottery dog. Lin Yuan subconsciously wanted to release the Nether Realm's black water. After all, the northern frontier was different from the endless sea. He had accumulated a large amount of Nether Realm's black water here. Moreover, after the battle between the northern frontier and the Sky Demon, the Nether Realm's black water had swallowed a lot of the Sky Demon. Naturally, it had become even larger. If he released all of the Nether Realm's black water, it would not be difficult to form a nether river that was about 1,000 meters long. However, the moment he opened his mouth, before he could release the Nether Realm's black water, Lin Yuan closed his mouth again and obediently swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The cities in the northern frontier that were still under his control basically relied on the Nether Realm's black water and the Black Water Dragon King Temple to resist the corrosion of the Nether Realm's black water. Taking away a large amount of the Nether Realm's black water was equivalent to handing over the territory of the northern frontier to the Undying. This kind of transaction could not be done. If he did it once, the world's will that had been hiding in the dark would get what it wanted. Chapter 894. He had thought that the battle between Hitorigami and Luo Yu would be like the battle between a warrior and a sorcerer in a game from his previous life. Before the sorcerer finished chanting, the warrior would definitely have the upper hand. However, he did not expect that after Luo Yu finished chanting, Hitorigami would suddenly transform from a brawny warrior into a brawny demon warrior. How good would it be to have a background? There were many zombies in his previous life, especially during the Republic of China period. Zombies were rampant, but how many zombies were out of the realm of melee combat? Look at Hitorigami. She was a warrior when she released her blood and chi. She could cast spells when she retracted her blood and chi. She was a standard dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. If she had been placed in a Western fantasy novel in his previous life, she would have been the main character template. Moreover, she had an extremely powerful father. Although this father did not treat his daughter well, he had also given her the ability to be the nemesis of water. Why did Luo Yu attack? This thought popped into Lin Yuan's mind uncontrollably. Hitorigami was one of the existences that had escaped from the primordial world. Those primordial creatures might not know everything about her, but they definitely had some understanding of this woman who had left her name in the legends. It was impossible that they did not know that the Count of Wind and the Count of Rain had been defeated by her. At this time, they had sent Luo Yu, who was restrained by Hitorigami, to help. What kind of behavior was this? A standard actor. This was called gifting one's head. Luo Yu, who was flying high in the sky, took a deep breath and looked at the rising steam. He turned to look at Lin Yuan and the rest and growled angrily, "Why are you in a daze? Can't you see that I can't beat her? If we don't run now, we won't be able to escape when she escapes." Lin Yuan, Lei Qiuxing, Yang Qinglin, the two people and the flood dragon looked at each other, and they all showed a speechless expression. How could a noob be so self-righteous? If he couldn't beat her, why was he pretending? Good fellow, he had directly mobilized the water from the Wei River. That aura was like a whale swallowing thousands of miles. In the end, the water was just a means to control Hitorigami so that they could escape. If you had let out that fart earlier, we would have run far away by now. No one can leave. As if sensing that its prey was retreating, the drought demon that was trapped in the water suddenly let out a furious roar. Its hands that were covered in blood energy suddenly stretched out and directly pierced through the water dragon that was constantly rolling. With another push, it actually forcibly tore open a passage and strode out of the passage. It was only now that Lin Yuan noticed that Hanba did not seem to be faring too well either. Her originally bright red blood aura was now changing into a dark brown and viscous color. The glow that her body emitted had also become much weaker. After all, Luo Yu's techniques had been countered by her. The strength that both of them could display in this world was actually more or less the same. Of course, it was impossible for her to be completely unscathed. Especially when she had forcefully broken out of the encirclement, her exhaustion had become even more terrifying. TCH, you should know very well that even if I'm no match for you, you can't touch this black Jiao. We've waited bitterly in this world for so long, and now we've finally found hope. Do you really want to become enemies with all of us? Luo Yu flapped its wings and continued to circle in the sky. It stared coldly at Hanba but no longer attempted to attack. Hope. You're still dreaming of going back? Hanba looked at Luo Yu with a complicated expression and said loudly, is this black Jiao worthy of being called hope? Do you really think that the final victor will be? Shut up. Luo Yu roared and said coldly, Hanba, so what if karma can't do anything to you? No matter how strong you are, can you be stronger than the 6 sages? When we escaped, we already had no choice. Do you think that just because you've become the nether king of this world, you can protect yourself from that turmoil? What a joke. If that black Jiao wanted to, it would have taken the position of nether king long ago. Even the living beings after the ancient times can see clearer than you. You've really lived for so many years in vain. At this point, Luo Yu paused and looked meaningfully at Hanba. He continued, when this world is repaired, there's no reason for that person to let this place go. Over the years, which world hasn't there been any trace of the 6 sages descending? Even a broken world like the Tianwu world has been attacked by Mingi's minions. Do you think that when the 6 sages descend, you can escape death? As soon as he finished speaking, Hanba's body trembled slightly. As a zombie, she was not in the 3 realms and 6 paths. The power of karma could not affect her at all, so she could attack Lin Yuan. But even if the power of karma could not kill her, it did not mean that powerful cultivators or demonic beasts could not kill her. If this world was repaired and the 3 realms and 6 paths were established, the power that the world could bear would be greatly increased. At that time, the sages would be able to descend on this world. They were not existences that the indigenous worlds could resist. Now, in the various worlds outside the Eldritch world, either the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had dried up and cultivators had no space to live, or extremely powerful refugees from the Eldritch world and the Chosen One had joined forces to resist the attacks of Hongjuan's minions. But in the Tianwu world, there weren't many powerful refugees from the Great Desolation era here. The truly powerful existences wouldn't choose to settle down in a small world. In other words, a small world simply couldn't bear their power. The heavens chosen one of this world, He Jiao, wasn't very powerful. Not to mention existences from the Great Desolation era, even the top natives of the Tianwu world could easily defeat him. When he thought of this, Hitorigami seemed a little hesitant. Because she could not fight against the Eldritch world's creatures after the world was repaired. Without the help of the Chosen One, this world would have to face the Eldritch world alone before the allies of the other worlds realized the changes in the Tianwu world. If that was the case, the only outcome for this world would be to accept destruction or enslavement. Similar situations were common in other small worlds that had completed themselves. After hesitating for a while, Hanba stepped towards Lin Yuan again, but she slowed down, as if she was still thinking. If I become the king of hell and open up the underworld, my power will increase by leaps and bounds. Unless this world is destroyed, I will be an immortal existence. Do you think I will believe you just because you said a few alarmist words? Hanba raised her head and looked straight at Luo Yu, who was flapping his wings, and said loudly. If you become the king of hell, I'm afraid you won't see the day when your power increases by leaps and bounds. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's voice rang out, although I don't have specific information, I am sure that the celestial sovereign has been born. Once the underworld is established, the human world will start to fight, just like in the investiture of the gods. Even if you kill everyone in the world, you will not be able to stop the establishment of the heavenly court. When the 3 realms are complete, any one of the 6 sages will be able to destroy your true spirit and refine the king of hell, who you say is immortal, into an obedient puppet. Chapter 895. I see. Hitorigami lowered its head slightly, allowing its messy hair to cover its face again. It seemed to be thinking about something. Luo Yu continued to flap its wings and soar high in the sky. As a magic-type class that had lived for who knows how many years, it was well aware of its strengths and weaknesses. There was still water nearby. If Hitorigami made any strange moves, although it was no match for Hitorigami, it no longer needed to foolishly fight Hitorigami head-on like before. It could deal with any situation with ease. However, if it lowered its altitude, if it encountered a ruthless character like Hitorigami who cultivated both magic and martial arts, it would not be long before Hitorigami tore it apart. Luo Yu flew high in the sky for its own safety and also as a deterrent to Hitorigami. After all, as long as it was alive, Hitorigami would not be able to easily approach Lin Yuan. Once Hitorigami turned hostile again, it would be equivalent to hardening its killing intent. Although the primeval creatures who had not shown themselves were not on good terms with Lin Yuan, they would not watch Lin Yuan die without doing anything. If it missed, it would be equivalent to facing all the primeval creatures. Retreat. Lin Yuan, who was wrapped around Lei Qiuxing's shoulder, suddenly tensed up and growled in Lei Qiuxing's ear. From the moment the clouds began to disperse, he could vaguely smell danger. If Hitorigami really restrained its killing intent, this sense of danger would naturally dissipate. After all, there was no such thing as a delay. If it wanted to kill, it would kill. Once the danger was resolved, it would not warn Lin Yuan again. This also meant that Hitorigami had wanted to kill him from the beginning. At this moment, when she lowered her head and pretended to be thinking, she was definitely not weighing the pros and cons. She was deceiving Luo Yu. Hitorigami and Luo Yu's ears were extremely sensitive. Almost as soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, Luo Yu had already mobilized the water and swept it towards Hitorigami, who was ready to strike. Hitorigami was even faster. The blood shadow around her trembled, and her speed skyrocketed. She was even faster than when she fought Luo Yu. The rolling water did not hinder Hitorigami at all. It could even be said that the water was shaken off by Hitorigami before it could even catch a whiff of its exhaust. Fortunately, Lei Qiuxing had fled with Lin Yuan all the way here. Although he was in a state of confusion, his heart was as clear as a mirror. Just like when he was in power as an emperor, every decree, an imperial decree, was a game with the aristocratic families, sects, and nobles. Once a peace was made, it could not be reneged. As for how many people would die and how many people would be affected, it was not important to him. After all, a high and mighty person would not care about the feelings of ants. Now, the two positions had been reversed. Hitorigami and Luo Yu were important people. Lin Yuan, who knew many secrets even though his cultivation was not high, could be counted as well. Only he and Yang Qinglin were placed in the position of ants. If anything happened to them, he and Yang Qinglin would definitely not be able to survive. Therefore, after being tied to the same rope as Lin Yuan, Lei Qiuxing chose to trust Lin Yuan unconditionally. When Lin Yuan spoke, his body reacted in the most honest way. With all his might, he retreated. Although Lei Chouxing and Hitorigami's speed could not be compared, at this moment, this single step was the difference between the mortal world and the underworld. Because of Lei Chouxing's subconscious retreat, he barely avoided Hitorigami's main area of attack. Like a blood pillar that reached the sky, a bloody aura rose from where Lei Chouxing had been standing. Countless drops of blood were like sharp blades that strangled everything within the range of the blood pillar. Lei Chouxing, who had retreated in advance, only felt a tightness in his chest. His entire body was sent flying. Moreover, at the critical moment, a layer of blood-red light screen rose. The moment Lin Yuan's incense power was exhausted, it filled the gap in the divine power barrier and barely protected this external incarnation of his. However, the blood-red light screen did not last long. The moment Lei Chouxing was sent flying, the blood-red light screen had already shattered. If he had been a second late, Lin Yuan might have been ground into a pile of minced meat. Young Qinglin, who had appeared 30 meters away in a flash, turned pale. He said while swaying, "Black Jiao, remember this. Today, you owe this seed a life. In the future, you will have to pay me back." Lin Yuan nodded slightly, but did not say anything. Therefore, although the cultivators of that era enjoyed the most primitive rules and the densest spiritual qi of the universe, their cultivation environment was undoubtedly the worst. They had to face the experts from the primeval world, the first-generation demonic beasts who had gained wisdom after obtaining cultivation methods, and their fellow Taoists who had gone mad. Not only the cultivators, but also the entire human race at that time found it difficult to move forward and was on the verge of destruction at any time. It was just like when Goddess Nviwa created the human race, when the weak human race faced the primeval creatures who had gained wisdom from the primeval world. To be able to find a suitable path of cultivation in that era, cultivate all the way to the Kongming realm, and even foresee their impending death, make arrangements in advance to resurrect countless years later, of course, they were not easy to deal with. Young Qinglin saw it more clearly than Lei Chouxing. Lei Chouxing was just a grasshopper tied with a rope. Young Qinglin, on the other hand, saw through the purpose of Luo Yu. Luo Yu was a top-level powerhouse who was not inferior to Hanba in other aspects, except that its magic was restrained by Hanba. The reason why it appeared here to confront Hanba was to protect Lin Yuan. If Lin Yuan died or escaped, Luo Yu would never fight Hanba to the death like an iron-headed doll. At that time, when facing Hanba who had won, he would have no chance of survival even if he used all his trump cards. Protecting Lin Yuan was protecting himself. Lin Yuan also saw through this point, so he nodded tacitly. Even if Yang Qinglin was an ancient cultivator, he would not be able to recover his strength so quickly. Moreover, when he was at his peak, he was not a match for Hanba. Just now, he was able to withstand Hanba's attack, most likely because he had used some precious treasure. Looking at how he looked like he had suffered a backlash, it was possible that it was his natal magic weapon. This was a huge favor. According to karma, Lin Yuan should repay him with his life. Things like natal magic weapons were not things that could be casually refined like those in the novels of his previous life. In the untainted world, these things were usually associated with each other. This kind of treasure would not be easily damaged, but once it was damaged, even the lightest damage would cause one's cultivation state to drop by a level. You were lucky to be able to dodge it once, then, what about this attack? Hanba raised his head. Even the messy hair that covered his face could not hide his faint gaze. As he raised his hands, the blood-colored pillar of heaven began to tilt towards the area where Lin Yuan was, as if the firmament was being torn apart and the Milky Way was being reversed. Chapter 896. Young Qinglin and Lei Chouxing's expressions changed drastically as they looked at the falling blood-colored heavenly pillar. This was because they were very clear that this level of technique had already exceeded the scope of their abilities. In other words, it had already exceeded their understanding. If no powerful figure intervened, the three of them would definitely die. Only Lin Yuan looked indifferent, as if he was not the target of Hanbe. After dodging the fatal attack that Hanbe had launched while pretending to be thinking, the sense of crisis in his heart rapidly decreased. Obviously, a powerful figure of the untainted land who was hiding in the dark could no longer hold back. Therefore, this seemingly powerful attack was destined to be unable to hurt him. Hanbe, we gave your father some face, but you treat us like ants. That's not right, is it? In the unseen world, another voice sounded. It sounded like a sigh, but it was filled with endless killing intent and piercing coldness. The void tore open, and a red-clothed figure walked out. The pale young man had a faint smile on his face, but there was no smile in his eyes. The moment he appeared, he gently patted the fiery red gourd at his waist. The gourd instantly flew up and expanded against the wind. In the blink of an eye, it was already covering the sky and the sun. Immediately, seemingly endless red sand was spat out from the gourd, hitting the blood-red pillar like a storm. The blood-red pillar disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Old man, how dare you spoil my cultivation? You deserve to die. Hanbe raised her hand again, and her beautiful eyes were bloodshot. She stared coldly at Red Cloud Taoist as if she was looking at a corpse. In a complete world, Red Cloud might not be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 6 saints, but he was still an existence that was one step away from becoming a saint. In the untainted land, he would definitely be a powerful figure. Although he could not be compared to the 3,000 demon gods, he was not an ordinary person either. Hanbe was indeed powerful, but in terms of age and cultivation, she was just a child in front of Red Cloud Taoist. However, it was different in the Tianwu world. No matter how high Red Cloud Taoist's cultivation was in the past, in this world, everyone's upper limit was actually the same. What they competed with was their own means and foundation. For example, Luo Yu's power was similar to Hanbe's, but its means were restrained by Hanbe. It could only be a deterrent. Under such circumstances, it was not difficult to understand why Hanbe dared to talk nonsense to Red Cloud Taoist. After all, if this world was complete, she would definitely not do so. Even if she did, Red Cloud Taoist would have to fight with one of the 6 saints first. How could he have the time to argue with her? Let's see who's the real deal over there. Let's see who will die in our battle. Daoist Red Cloud was clearly embarrassed to be reprimanded by a junior. He had been too angry recently. Previously, in the Endless Sea, he had been humiliated by Lin Yuan because of the great karma on his body. He could only leave resentfully. Now that Lin Yuan was in danger, he had rushed to the northern frontier to save Lin Yuan. Originally, he wanted to use this opportunity to ridicule Lin Yuan. However, he did not expect that after he broke Hanbe's means, before he could do anything to her, Hanbe would start to clamor, as if she did not put him in her eyes at all. In his rage, he could no longer maintain his image as a good guy. Naturally, Red Cloud Taoist revealed his true nature. Whether it was spiritual companion items or innate spiritual roots, they were all based on the personality of the owner. For example, the great immortal Yang Mei who had mastered the law of space was a classic example. Including Pan Gu who had created the world and transformed into all things, Yang Mei could easily be ranked in the top 10 of the sky demon gods. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he could even be ranked in the top 3. However, when did such a person care about other things? Just like his original body, the hollow willow. As for Red Cloud Taoist's spiritual companion treasure, the 99 soul-scattering gourd, he hung on his waist. Even in the unscrupulous primitive world, there were not many existences who would casually ask for the souls of scattered people. Demon Master Kunpeng was tricked by Western sage Urshi, but only destroyed Red Cloud Taoist's physical body, not his primordial spirit. Even with the protection of the innate spiritual treasure, if someone like Demon Master Kuenping really wanted to chase after him, how could Red Cloud Taoist escape? Speaking of which, the 99 soul-scattering gourd could be said to be a natural enemy for Hanba. As the ancestor of zombies, absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon was only the most basic cultivation for Hanba. Just like other cultivators, apart from meditating, Hanba also needed to consume spiritual treasures and elixirs. Hanba also knew how to kill and steal souls. Not only could he absorb blood to increase his cultivation, he also needed to refine the souls that were full of hostility and resentment into his own blood, turning them into an extremely vicious attack. Therefore, it was true that Red Cloud Taoist had dispelled the blood-colored pillar and disrupted Hanba's cultivation. Even if your father were here, he wouldn't dare to. Red Cloud Taoist cast the 99 soul-scattering gourd over his head and stared at Hanba with a cold look. However, before Red Cloud Taoist could finish, Hanba roared hoarsely, "You can't stop talking about that old bastard, can you? Even if I don't have this father and don't want the position of Heavenly Lady, I'm still the god of drought, a great devil. I've come this far on my own. Since when did we become like those rotten Taoists, who had to suppress others with their roots?" Lin Yuan twitched his mouth. With Red Cloud's mouth, it was not surprising that he would be beaten to death. However, the problem was that this guy had a wide circle of friends. In the primitive world, everyone thought he was a nice guy, which surprised Lin Yuan. Hanba's father was indeed ferocious. In the later period of the Yan Emperor's era, he took advantage of the situation and fought with various tribes. He was invincible all the way and eventually created the situation of the Yan Emperor, the Yellow Emperor and Qi Yu. After the Yan Emperor was defeated by Qi Yu, he fought with Qi Yu many times and unified the world. During his reign, there was no need to talk about his achievements. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were not just empty titles. They were not real. Looking at the Yellow Emperor's life, there were many unethical things he did. Hanba was definitely one of them. After all, without this daughter, Chiyo's formation of bitter wind and bitter rain was enough to make the Yellow Emperor suffer. However, after the war, Hanba quickly became a demon and was hated by everyone. Humans can't, at least they shouldn't. Therefore, it was only natural for Hanba to hate the Yellow Emperor. After all, the Yellow Emperor could be said to have taken great credit for her downfall. Moreover, he had thrown everything to his daughter, who had turned into a demon, to bear the burden while he happily took over the Yan Emperor and began the reign of the Yellow Emperor. Red Cloud Taoist, on the other hand, not only did he destroy Hanba's cultivation, he said a total of 3 sentences. One sentence was ruthless, and the other 2 sentences were about the Yellow Emperor. It was as if they did not touch Hanba because of the Yellow Emperor's face. Otherwise, Hanba would be a piece of trash that could be casually crushed to death. With this style of speech, how could he have a wide circle of friends? If this was not strange, then what was? Chapter 897. Let's go, let's go. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and directly told Lei Chuxing without lowering his voice. Putting himself in Hitorigami's shoes, if he were in Hitorigami's shoes, he would probably be fuming with rage at this moment. There was even a possibility that he would be killed on the spot. Even if the space collapsed and they perished together, it would not be a loss. No matter what, Red Cloud Taoist was a mighty figure who almost became a sage. He was also an innate creature in the untainted land. It was a great deal to trade one for one. After all, once the world was repaired, the strength of the 2 sides would be pulled apart quickly. It would be difficult to kill him if he tried to talk his way out. But even if Hanba did not have the thought of exchanging one for one, since he had already said so, it was impossible for them not to fight. If such experts were to fight, if not for the fact that Luo Yu had stopped them from fighting, the shock waves from the battle would be enough to kill them 800 times over. If they did not run now, they would not be able to do so later. You can't escape. The killing intent in Hanba's eyes disappeared. She broke away from Red Cloud Taoist's mocking state and stared at Lin Yuan fiercely again. Lin Yuan tilted his head and said in a low voice, "Come on, I know what you're thinking. You know very well that once the three realms are repaired and the sages arrive in this world, you won't be able to defeat them even if you join forces. But this doesn't stop you from wanting to be the Yama King. After all, the sages will arrive after the world is repaired. If you kill me, not only will you be able to secure your position as the Yama King, these untainted creatures will also help you hunt down the candidates for the Celestial Emperor to prevent the three realms from being repaired. At that time, you'll have enough time to accumulate your foundation and ensure that you'll be safe when the sages arrive, right?" Just like how Hanba could break Luo Yu's means in the same realm, Red Cloud Taoist could also break Hanba's cultivation. The realm after real God depended on one's foundation and accumulation. Even if Hanba's basic attributes were 100 times higher than Red Cloud Taoist's, it would not be as good as Red Cloud Taoist's. If Hitorigami were to become the king of hell, she would definitely stir up a storm of blood. Once she had accumulated enough vengeful souls and chi of blood, it would not be so easy for Red Cloud Taoist to break her technique. Once she had accumulated to a certain extent, it would not be impossible for her to fight against a saint. After all, sages were not that strong, especially the sages after Hongjun. They were fake sages to begin with. Whether it was the so-called primordial violet chi or the severing of three corpses, they were all evil paths. Before Hongjun took control of the heavenly Tao, those old men were all masters who had directly attained primordial chaos. Each one of them was stronger than the last. There were even existences like Yang Mei and Shi Qin who had grasped the great Tao of space and time. Not to mention bullying juniors, they could directly crush those of the same level. Being a saint and having the strength of a saint were two different things. What was primordial chaos? Comprehending and grasping a great Tao meant directly attaining primordial chaos. To put it in a more profound way, it meant fusing oneself with the Tao. Reaching the saint realm without attaining primordial chaos was just fooling fools. It was like a demonic beast without innate magic skills. No matter how strong its attribute was, it would only be played to death by a cunning predator. Only those ignorant creatures of the untainted land at that time knew how powerful the six sages were. They did not even dare to resist and directly escaped from the untainted land. However, for Lin Yuan, who was in existence after the ancient times, it was another matter. Hongjun said that there were only a limited number of sages and that the six sages were conferred. In fact, it was just a group leader setting up 6 administrators. However, in fact, there was no limit to the number of sages. Fusing oneself with the Tao meant attaining primordial chaos. If one could do this, he would be in the saint realm. In other words, in the original untainted land, everyone could be a group leader. However, Hongjun, the group leader, turned it into a situation where all living beings desperately fought for the administrator position. After being pointed out by Lin Yuan, Hanbao was not anxious or angry. She just nodded and said coldly, "Yes, but even if you see through it, what can you do? When I kill you, I will be the king of hell of this world. This old man will have to hold it in even if he is dissatisfied." When she finished speaking, she curled her lips in disdain. Obviously, she was still dissatisfied with Red Cloud's previous words. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and said doubtfully, "Have you never thought about why you would have such an idea? Why did you choose to invade the northern frontier at this time and try to transform it into the underworld? In the end, it thinks that I am too slow and wants to use this method to elect a king of hell as soon as possible. So, have you never thought that the Celestial Emperor actually existed long ago? How is this possible?" Hanba and Red Cloud roared almost at the same time. Although the Jade Emperor in Zhang Byron's previous life was never liked, the Celestial Emperor was indeed supreme. Even if Zhang Bairen was not in the top ranks, he was more than qualified to fight for the title of the number one person below the sage. After all, he did not go through the 132 billion tribulations for nothing. Zhang Bairen could become a Buddha after going through 81 tribulations. His strength was imaginable. After all, he represented the heavens and was the supreme ruler of the gods. Although the celestial emperor was only the executor of the rules, the position of executor was not so easy. The 3 realms, the 4 lives, the 10 directions, and the 6 paths were all under the control of the rules. Although they each had their own master, in the end, they were still under the control of the celestial emperor. If an existence like the celestial emperor really appeared in this world, it was impossible for them not to know. Unless Daoist Red Cloud suddenly raised his head and stared at the cloudless sky. He clenched his teeth, his right hand still forming a seal. After a while, his face suddenly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, as if someone had struck his chest with a heavy hammer. Is there really a celestial emperor? When Hanbe saw Daoist Red Cloud's aura suddenly become chaotic, he immediately asked in surprise. Red Cloud wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and nodded solemnly. He said in a dull voice, "It does exist. Just now, when I was calculating the heavenly mystery, it was just a glimpse. Before I could see the origin of the celestial emperor, I was directly beaten back." As his voice fell, he no longer paid attention to Hanbe. Instead, he turned his head and looked at Lin Yuan. He said in a deep voice, "He hid it so well that even we did not find any clues." "How did you know?" It was impossible for them not to notice the birth of the celestial emperor. Even a heaven's chosen one like Lin Yuan could not escape. He was also targeted by Hanbe for the position of the king of hell. Of course, this was also because the will of the world deliberately leaked information about Lin Yuan. However, the existence of the celestial emperor was not leaked at all. If Red Cloud had not suddenly calculated the heavenly mystery to investigate the celestial emperor, he would have been caught off guard. In order to prevent more secrets from being leaked, he exposed the existence of the celestial emperor and beat Red Cloud out. This was also the work of the will of the world. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.